A little while before the two of them met, the scene was a city completely in ruins and covered in sand. In the year 2125, a boy walked alone across this land, devastated by destruction and abandonment. Suddenly, he notices something on the dusty ground and curiously looks down. Crouching down calmly, the young man picks up a human skull that was almost completely buried in the dry earth. Faced with that bleak vision of his world's fate, the boy lets out a tired sigh. He then confirms that there are no humans left in this city either. This is Rihito, the young man who wanders tirelessly in search of humanity. The story flashes back 100 years, straight to 2025, when a massive flaming meteor struck the planet with incredible force. Although the initial impact in the forest didn't cause major structural damage, the real threat was just getting started. It was from that crash that the world's true nightmare began. Initially too small to be seen with the naked eye, countless extraterrestrial microbes began to multiply and severely mutate within the flesh of living things. A dark and sinister energy started to emanate from within the enormous impact crater. Soon after, monstrous claws broke through the rocks and emerged from the depths of the earth. Those grotesque things, which would later be called aliens, took the form of horrifying beasts of a completely unknown nature. Without wasting any time, the horde of monsters began a merciless invasion of the cities, spreading fire and destruction. All of the military's armed resistance proved to be completely useless against the brutal attacks of those relentless creatures. The planet's population quickly plummeted due to the constant and vicious onslaught from the beasts. Faced with this scene of imminent despair, scientists began developing a mysterious project in glowing test tubes. The solution they found was a new combat weapon based on human genes, thus creating the androids, proving that Rihito was never a normal boy, but one of these creations. Back in the year 2125, a giant alien worm emerges from the ground, kicking up sand, but our MC coldly tells the creature to get out of his way. Defying the order, the colossal creature lets out a threatening roar in his direction. The monster charges, digging its head into the sandy terrain, but the android leaps back, easily dodging the lunge. Assessing the enemy's movements in midair, he scoffs that the attack was way too slow. In a swift and brutal motion, the young man lands an extremely powerful kick on the side of the armored worm. The impact is so absurd that it kicks up a cloud of dust and sends the gigantic creature flying far away from the area. After delivering the devastating blow, Rihito lands on the rocky ground with the ease of someone who barely broke a sweat. He just silently watches the monster as it's sent flying toward the horizon. A holographic blue screen appears floating in front of him, announcing that the leveling system has just gained experience points. Swiping his hand without interest, he dismisses the notification while reflecting that humanity was wiped out before the androids could even save them. With a fist clenched in frustration, the young man questions what his purpose in life is in this empty world with no one left to protect. Staring up at the bright sun in the blue sky, the android confesses to himself that he's reached his limit with this lonely life. For more than half a century, he walked through the desert, clinging to the remote possibility of finding survivors, but he never found a thing. This fruitless search takes a new turn when he stumbles upon a huge, abandoned communication antenna under the setting sun. Entering the decaying structure, Rihito hopes to find people hiding there, or at least some clue as to their whereabouts. The inside of the building is pitch black and full of debris scattered next to destroyed industrial machinery. Needing to see his way through the wreckage, the boy activates a small light in the palm of his hand. He cautiously moves through the dark corridors of the facility, illuminating the corners in search of answers about the past. His lonely footsteps echo down the dark staircase, covered in accumulated dust and forgotten memories. Finally reaching a large, round control room, he curiously observes the number of broken computers. Analyzing his surroundings, he quickly notes that this type of advanced monitoring center is a very rare find. Just then, a specific device on a desk emits a faint light, instantly drawing his gaze to the glow. Picking up the old cell phone, the android realizes it still has power and speculates about the chance of it connecting to a distant network. The smartphone screen displays an open messaging app interface, proving the boy's theory that it's working. Determined to try and contact someone, he goes along with the idea and starts typing on the digital keyboard. Looking at the bright phone screen, the young man is impressed, commenting that the device has tech features he's never seen before. Not wanting to waste this unique opportunity for communication, he decides to put the device in his jacket pocket just in case. The simple decision to take the phone from that base would drastically alter the entire course of planet Earth's destiny. With no idea of the monumental impact of his actions, Rihito concludes that he's done searching and it's time to head back to his camp. The young man wanders through the rocky desert again as the darkness of night dominates the inhospitable landscape. Suddenly, the ground starts to shake again, and the same giant worm resurfaces menacingly, making the boy scoff and ask if this thing is the area boss. The beast's relentless persistence finally exhausts what little patience our protagonist had left. Concentrating an absurd amount of energy in the air around him, he decides to show the creature a fraction of his true combat power. A small, highly destructive sphere of light begins to condense in the palm of his outstretched hand. With a cold and merciless look, the android tells the creature to eat this. He activates the Destar Cannon technique, firing a gigantic beam of blue energy that tears through the desert darkness in a straight line. The power level of the luminous ray is so overwhelming that it hits the monster head on, obliterating part of its body in an instant. After incinerating the beast, he sarcastically apologizes, claiming the monster just became his EXP, and then the narrative cuts back to the year 2025. In the prosperous city of Tokyo, a young woman sleeps peacefully on her stomach in the comfort of her moonlit room. The comforting silence of the early morning is broken when a cell phone starts vibrating on the mattress, grabbing her attention. Hoshina, an ordinary high school sophomore, wakes up confused, wondering who would be texting her at such a ridiculous hour. Reading Rihito's unusual text asking to be her friend and mentioning his height and combat skills, the girl sighs, thinking it's just some annoying spam from a dating app. Suddenly, the screen of the phone Hoshina ignored begins to emit a strong, magical glow in the dark room. The sudden flash startles the student, who recoils in terror, not understanding the source of the luminous anomaly. A huge beam of light completely envelops the girl, and she screams in panic as she's pulled straight into the sky through her ceiling. The teleportation ends abruptly with the young woman falling hard, face down, on solid rock. In a lot of pain and disoriented by the impact, she slowly tries to get up while processing what just happened. As she observes the vastness around her, the girl goes into shock, finding herself surrounded by dozens of ruined buildings and questioning where on earth she is. Despite her obvious fear of being alone amidst the rubble, she musters her courage and walks down the destroyed street of an unrecognizable city. The frightening and dark scenery makes her anxious as she tries to comprehend her situation in the middle of this catastrophe. Taking her phone out of her pocket in a desperate hope to call someone, she's disappointed to find there's simply no cell service there. In that instant, a false epiphany hits Hoshina, and she joyfully deduces that the only possible explanation is that she's in a dream. Very confident in her convenient theory, she nods in agreement with herself, stating that otherwise, this craziness would make no sense at all. To test the rules of this dream-like environment, the student touches a broken concrete wall on the street with her bare hand. Perfectly feeling the rough, cold texture of the debris, she's impressed by the absurd level of realism in this lucid dream. Completely convinced she's safe inside her own mind, the young woman continues her lonely walk under the starry night and the dead silence of the shattered metropolis. Staring at the debris without a care for any real danger, Hoshina wishes out loud that this whole immersive experience would get a little more fun soon. While rummaging through the rubble, Hoshina finds a pair of shoes and celebrates her luck at finding something useful. With the old shoes on, the girl comments with relief that this will make walking much easier. Just then, a sudden noise of shifting rocks echoes from right behind her. Startled by the abrupt sound, the student whips her head around, wanting to know what that was. As she scans the dark, destroyed street, she quietly asks if anyone is there. The area remains completely silent with no sign of movement. After letting out a heavy sigh to calm her nerves, she concludes it was all just her imagination. But a sinister claw silently emerges from the darkness, right behind the young woman. A gigantic, multi-eyed alien monster rises from behind the destroyed buildings, staring down at its prey. Faced with the horrifying creature, the girl lets out a piercing scream of panic. Desperate for her life, she starts running as fast as she can through the debris-filled avenue, gasping for breath. During her frantic escape, the student wonders what kind of monster that is and complains that even for a dream, this is way too scary. The colossal beast relentlessly crawls down the street in pursuit of its human prey. The alien prepares its attack, raising one of its enormous claws into the air. With a brutal motion, the creature brings its sharp claw down toward the ground to crush the girl. To avoid being flattened, the girl throws herself forward, letting out a cry of terror. The clumsy leap causes her to fall hard amidst the loose rocks. Completely desperate, the young woman begs to wake up soon if this really is a dream. Panting and trembling, she lifts her head and is faced with a terrible obstacle. The path ends in a dead end, blocked by a huge wall of rubble. With the beast slowly approaching from behind, she panics, asking what she should do now. The grotesque creature raises its glowing claws, ready to slice its cornered prey. The monster unleashes a devastating vertical strike, tearing through the air toward the student. With nowhere to run, Hoshina just screams, squeezing her eyes shut and bracing for the end. Suddenly, a boot steps firmly on the loose rocks of the battlefield. In the blink of an eye, Rihito rushes forward at an absurd speed, intercepting the attack to protect the young woman. The colossal force of the impact sends the giant monster reeling backward violently. Still huddled on the ground, the girl opens her eyes, not understanding how she survived. The android blocks the beast's gigantic claw using only one hand, while displaying a cold expression. Face to face with the creature, our hero casually informs it that he's about to turn it into experience points. Channeling pure energy into his arm, the young man fires off a brutal uppercut. The destructive power of the impact launches the colossal monster into the air, as if it weighed nothing. Giving it no chance to defend, the android leaps up, reaching a height even greater than the flying beast. With his sharp eyes locked on the target, the protagonist prepares his finishing blow. Aided by gravity, he descends, delivering a crushing energy attack that smashes the creature straight into the ground. The young man lands with extreme lightness on the rocky terrain, right after obliterating the enemy. Dusting himself off, he sighs in relief, sarcastically asking if that was all the creature had. Sitting on the ground, the student is completely dumbfounded, processing the fact that this stranger just saved her. Just then, the protagonist turns his head, noticing the human presence there in the rubble. Casually walking over to her, the boy asks if she's okay, and Hoshina agrees, stuttering a little. At that moment, the young woman feels a sharp pain and notices a bleeding wound on her knee, not knowing when she got hurt. Fixing her gaze on her own open wound, panic takes over the girl as she questions if maybe, just maybe, this isn't a dream after all. Worried by her silence, the android crouches down nearby, demanding an answer to know if she's really okay. As he analyzes the girl more closely, the young man's eyes widen in total shock. By the color of the liquid running down her leg, he immediately recognizes the presence of human blood. Grabbing the student's shoulders urgently, the protagonist begs her not to tell him she's human. The girl confirms the obvious, annoyed, and then demands to know who he is and what kind of freak that monster was. Noticing her confusion, the boy asks in surprise how it's possible for her to know absolutely nothing about the aliens. Extremely agitated by the insane situation, Hoshina retorts, questioning how she would know about the existence of creatures like that. Bringing a hand to his chin, the android reflects that he thought it was impossible for any human to have survived and finds it even more bizarre that she's oblivious to the apocalypse. To organize the chaos, he asks her to calm down, stating that first, he needs to explain the current state of the world. After talking for a while, sitting on the rubble, Rihito asks if the young woman has finally managed to understand the story. The student's mind short-circuits, trying to process the absurd information that in the year 2025, a meteor fell, spawning alien beasts. This crazy story about a space substance causing an explosive birth of monsters 100 years ago sounds like a bad movie plot to her. Trembling with sweat and nerves, the girl desperately asks what he means there in the year 2125. Realizing her ignorance is genuine, the boy asks where on earth she came from. With her hands on her head in pain, the young woman says that even she can't quite believe it, but that he needs to listen. Through her lit-up phone, she reveals that she came from 100 years in the past and ended up there suddenly after receiving a bizarre message. Looking at the device's screen, the protagonist gets a huge shock when he realizes that he himself was the one who sent that text. Frightened by the boy's reaction, Hoshina anxiously asks what that means and what's happening to them. The android backs away a little, honestly stating that he has no idea how to solve this. With a serious expression, the young man points out that there's at least one thing he's absolutely sure of now. Eager for any crumb of an answer, the student immediately asks what he discovered. Standing before the girl, the protagonist bluntly reveals that she has just traveled straight into the future. Due to that absurd realization, Hoshina's eyes widen in shock, hoping this is all just a bad joke. Far away, the narrative shows an imposing alien base full of sinister technology, glowing in the darkness under the starry sky. Inside this space fortress, immense holographic screens display real-time simulations of galaxies and planets. A mysterious hooded humanoid being cracks a malicious smile upon noticing an anomaly on the monitors. With his sharp, clawed hand, the villain manipulates the luminous data floating in the air. Watching the hologram of the solar system, the alien states out loud that he can clearly see a distortion in space-time. With a sadistic gleam in the shadows, the hooded figure murmurs that this temporal anomaly is extremely interesting. The scene returns to the ruined city, where the cold night wind blows relentlessly through the destroyed buildings. The protagonist and the student remain seated on the rubble, lost in a tense and reflective silence. Bothered by the prolonged pause, the girl takes the initiative, asking what's wrong now. Assuming an alert posture, the android warns that it's too dangerous for them to stay exposed there, and decides to take her safely to his nearby base. He confesses that he was already thinking about what to do next to solve this problem. Still confused, the student repeats the question, wanting to know what exactly he plans to do now. With his hand extended in a friendly manner, the protagonist suggests that for safety's sake, they should go to his base and asks if she agrees with the idea. Hesitating for a brief moment, the young woman stares at the boy's hand while assessing the situation. Without many options, she ends up accepting his help and takes his hand, agreeing shyly. Remembering an important detail, the android turns his head, mentioning that he hadn't introduced himself yet, and reveals his name is Rihito before asking for hers. With a slightly calmer look, the girl begins to answer her savior's question. During their walk under the starry sky of the ruined city, she reveals her name is Sina, receiving a gentle compliment from the boy about her name. The two continue their journey, clearing a path through the heavy debris, blocking the destroyed streets. A short time later, physical exhaustion begins to take its toll, and the student lets out a breathless sigh as she struggles to walk. Observing the desolate landscape around her, the young woman reflects, amazed and terrified at the same time, to be 100 years in the future. As soon as he notices his companion's heavy breathing, the boy stops walking and asks if something is wrong. Honestly, Sina confesses that she's having a hard time processing all this craziness and admits that exhaustion is already catching up to her. Aware of the situation, the protagonist agrees they've walked quite a bit but warns seriously that the area is too dangerous to take a break. He then apologizes for being demanding and begs the girl to hang in there just a little longer, as an alien could appear at any moment. To break the tense atmosphere, the student suggests they talk about something, since the dead silence of the place makes her very anxious. The boy readily agrees with the idea, but is unsure what would be a good topic for the moment. After a quick thought, the young woman raises her finger, indicating she just had a great idea for a conversation. Remembering their first encounter, the girl questions why he asked earlier if she was a human. With a curious look, Sina demands to know what exactly he meant by such an unusual question. Faced with that direct question, the protagonist's eyes widen as he realizes where she was going with her reasoning. With a sad expression, he looks down and begins to talk about the fate of humanity. The brutal revelation that humans are extinct catches the student by surprise, making her murmur in disbelief. In shock, the girl grabs the boy's arm, deducing that if humanity is gone, then he couldn't be human, and Rihito coldly confirms her suspicion. Under the starlight, the young man finally reveals his true nature, stating that he is an android created exclusively to combat the aliens. Completely stunned by the confession, Sina repeats the word "android," trying to process that absurd information. Remaining calm in the face of her shock, the protagonist simply confirms his statement with a simple nod. The student's mind can't take any more weirdness, and she screams in disbelief, thinking this is all a big joke. Not understanding her panic attack, the boy questions why he would make up a lie like that in the middle of an apocalypse. Desperate and clutching her head, the young woman laments ending up in such an insane place, and tearfully begs to go back to her normal world. Right after the girl's desperate outburst, they finally arrive in front of a decaying building, and the android announces they've reached their destination. Pointing to the dark entrance of the structure, the protagonist invites the young woman inside, telling her not to be shy. In the middle of the place's dark corridor, the student lets out a groan of discomfort due to the creepy appearance of the environment. Due to the lack of light, she ends up tripping into the boy's back and lets out a small yelp of surprise. To avoid further accidents in the dark, the boy activates his hand, light, and illuminates the path through the abandoned facilities. As soon as they arrive in a room that, ironically, looks quite tidy, he assures her the place is safe, despite being a bit messy from his absence. Showing hospitality, the young man points to the furniture in the center of the room and offers the couch for his guest to rest. Still wary of everything that has happened, Sina observes the seat in complete silence, debating whether she should really relax there. She runs her hand over the upholstery to check its condition and murmurs with resignation that she'll accept the invitation to sit. The impact of her body on the furniture raises a dense cloud of dust, making the girl cough and complain about the accumulated dirt. Despite the dust, the comfort of the couch wins out, and the student throws herself back, relieved to finally be able to breathe calmly. The piece is short, lived as anxiety once again takes over her mind with questions about her own future and the real fear of suffering another monster attack. At that exact moment of dramatic tension, the girl's stomach rumbles aggressively, completely breaking the mood with a clear warning of hunger. Suddenly, the room door opens, making the young woman jump in fright on the couch, thinking the danger had returned. To her relief, it's just the protagonist entering the room carrying a covered tray and apologizing for the delay. Relieved that it's not an imminent threat, the student exhales, regaining her composure. He carefully places the tray on the small table and mentions he brought food, figuring the girl would be starving after the long walk. With her eyes shining with joy at this kindness, Sina enthusiastically thanks him for the unexpected meal. Modest but confident, the young man explains it's just an instant meal but admits to being quite proud of his culinary skills. The girl clasps her hands in a traditional gesture and says she was starving as she eagerly prepares to devour the dish. Upon lifting the tray's lid, anticipation gives way to terror as a bubbling purple dish emanating a sinister aura is revealed. The disgusting and frightening appearance of that cosmic slop elicits a scream of horror from the student, who immediately recoils on the couch. Not noticing the obvious problem with the appearance of his masterpiece, the protagonist tilts his head, innocently asking what's wrong. The young woman trembles in disgust and points to the culinary atrocity, demanding to know what on earth that is in the pot. With a radiant smile, like someone who just made a gourmet dish, the android explains in detail that he cooked a soup using lizard skin and alien worm meat, guaranteeing the flavor is delicious. The list of macabre ingredients causes a strong wave of nausea in the girl, who covers her mouth, trying to hold back the urge to gag. Completely disgusted, she refuses the offer, screaming that there's no way she's putting that space gunk in her mouth. Still not understanding the rejection, the boy scratches his cheek in confusion and mentions that his professor always said being a picky eater was a serious flaw. Exasperated, the young woman retorts that the problem isn't being picky and questions the identity of this so-called professor, only to ignore the boy's answer about him being his creator and walk away depressed. Muttering that she just wants to go home, seeking a moment of privacy to cleanse her body and mind, the student locks herself in the base's bathroom. Under the hot water of the shower, Sina washes her hair and confesses with relief that the bath made her feel alive again. As she dries her face with a clean towel, her thoughts inevitably return to the grotesque meal offered minutes ago. The girl's mind creates a frightening mental image of her devouring that monstrous creature, and she desperately wonders if this will be her diet from now on. She shakes her head frantically to push away the horrifying thought and rejects with all her might the idea of becoming an alien eater. With determination, the student grabs the support bar and promises herself she needs to find a way to travel back to her own era. Out of the shower and wrapped only in a towel, reality hits, making her whisper in frustration, having no clue how to accomplish this impossible feat. Now in her casual clothes, the young woman rubs the towel on her damp head while trying to come up with some wild travel escape plan. Facing her exhausted reflection in the mirror, she admits momentary defeat, claiming she can't think of anything else, and decides to just sleep for now. Pointing a finger at her own image marks the moment Sina declares that all the problems of the apocalypse will be left for her future self to solve tomorrow. Upon returning to the main room, the girl is greeted by the protagonist, who kindly asks if she enjoyed her shower. Calmer after the relaxing hygiene, the student politely replies, thanking him for his hospitality and the use of the bathroom. The android adjusts the blankets on a makeshift bed in the corner of the room and says he's glad everything went well and without any issues. Surprised by the boy's continued kindness, Sina holds the edge of the blanket, asking if that soft spot was prepared for her to sleep in. Noticing his guest's hesitation, the boy asks with a slightly insecure tone if the improvised bed isn't meeting her standards. A shy smile appears on the young woman's face as she quickly denies any dissatisfaction and assures him she's immensely grateful to have a comfortable place to rest at the end of the world. Satisfied with the young woman's response, the protagonist comments that at least the issue of where she'll sleep is resolved. He turns his head toward the bubbling pot and asks once more if she's sure she doesn't want to eat anything. The pot containing that sinister space soup continues to exude a dark and threatening aura in the lit room. Faced with that grim sight, the girl trembles from head to toe and screams in terror that she's perfectly fine without dinner. With his eyes closed, the android simply accepts her refusal, understanding her decision. Trying to change the subject quickly, Sina questions if it's really okay for her to occupy the couch like that. The boy assures her it's all good, because as an android, his body allows him to sleep even while standing. Showing concern for his guest's comfort, he apologizes for not having a real bed but promises to fix up the other rooms in the base for her to use the next day. Waving her hands nervously, the student asks him not to go to all that trouble for her sake. She reinforces that her arrival there was just a bizarre accident and insists that the young man not worry so much about these details. To end the conversation, the girl pulls the blanket up to her neck and announces she's going to sleep now, as she's exhausted from all the craziness. Already lying down and settled on the upholstery, she awkwardly wishes her savior a good night. The boy remains standing in the same spot, just watching the human try to rest in that makeshift environment. Turning his head towards her, the protagonist agrees and returns the goodnight calmly. Darkness fills the silent room as Sina sleeps, soundly on the couch under the dim light of a lamp. Sitting on the floor and leaning against the metal wall, the android rests with his eyes closed, keeping guard. The silence of the night is broken by the student tossing and turning on the couch until she finally opens her eyes, confessing she can't fall asleep. Attentive to any noise, the young man opens his eyes at the same moment and calmly asks if she's having trouble sleeping. Hiding under the covers, the girl murmurs in agreement with his observation. He ponders that it's normal to have difficulty sleeping in a completely new environment, but warns that sleep deprivation is very bad for one's health. At that very moment of reflection, Sina's stomach rumbles loudly, making her wonder in a panic what she should do now. The unexpected noise catches the boy by surprise, leaving him a bit lost as he tries to identify the source of the sound. Red with embarrassment, the young woman sits up on the couch, holding her stomach. and admits that it's rumbling from hunger. Analyzing the situation, the protagonist concludes this is a big problem since the only available food was the soup he made earlier. Staring at the pot emanating that nefarious purple light, the girl laments that she's starving and seriously considers swallowing that gunk to survive. Mustering her courage, she imagines that if she just chugs the dish down in one go, maybe the experience won't be so traumatic. Noticing the human's agony, the android says he gets the message and decides to act, suggesting he go find something else. To prevent the food from being taken away, the student quickly moves forward and pulls the glowing pot closer to her. Without any ceremony, the girl begins to devour the alien meal, leaving the boy completely shocked by the unusual scene. Watching this extreme behavior, the young woman swallows a mouthful, tasting the exotic flavor for the first time. After swallowing, the student blinks in surprise and admits that the taste is surprisingly very good. Without wasting time, she uses the spoon to scrape up every last drop of the space meal while the boy watches in silence. With the pot completely empty in her lap, Sina clasps her hands again and thanks him sincerely for the food. Still a bit perplexed by the sudden change in attitude, the boy asks if she's really feeling okay. Licking her lips with a wide smile, the young woman confirms it was delicious and jokes that she should have eaten it much earlier. Relieved, the protagonist thinks to himself that the fact she accepted the meal means her guard has lowered a bit and wonders if they can be friends now. The sun rises, illuminating the vastness of the destroyed city, marking the beginning of the next morning in this devastated world. The morning calm is interrupted by the android facing off against a monstrous, giant, dinosaur-shaped alien. Observing the creature's magnitude, the young man wonders aloud what on earth a beast that size usually eats to get so big. The colossal monster tries to crush the human with a brutal stomp, but the boy leaps back, dodging with complete ease. Preparing a shimmering energy sphere in his hand, he comments with a sharp look that a target that big makes his job much easier. Hovering in the air, the protagonist fires a devastating blue light beam straight into the open mouth of the Jurassic beast. The explosion obliterates the enemy in seconds, allowing the boy to land on the sandy ground while letting out a sigh of a job well done. A huge smoking crater marks the impact site, proving the absurd strength of the attack he fired. At that moment, a holographic interface appears, announcing that android Rito's level has increased, thus granting an improvement in his physical abilities. Staring at the floating blue screen, the boy notes that just leveling up doesn't grant special abilities, proving he still has a long way to go. Clutching his clothes with determination, he promises that one day he will defeat the villain Grazes to avenge his professor, and for that, he needs to get much stronger. Changing his posture and clenching his fist with excitement, the young man declares that before that, he needs to focus on collecting fresh ingredients to cook an even better dish for Sina. Without wasting time, the android begins to slice the carcass of the alien dinosaur in the middle of the desert, separating the best pieces of meat. During the harvest, a sinister shadow flying over the red ruins of an antenna catches his attention, drawing his gaze upward. Far away, that same mysterious humanoid being continues to monitor the situation with his glowing eyes in the darkness of his base. Cutting back to the battlefield, a gigantic black alien dragon crosses the sunny sky, displaying its enormous wings. Assessing the new winged creature, the protagonist confidently deduces that his human guest will love the taste of that monster. Noticing the hunter's presence on the ground, the draconic beast turns its neck and prepares a furious charge, staring down its target. From above, the dragon fires a violent purple energy beam that tears through the skies toward the boy. With an agile movement, the young man jumps to the side, dodging the explosive attack without showing the slightest effort. Seeing the monster circle in the air, he notes that the creature is very fast for its size and concludes that fighting from a distance will be tricky. Changing tactics, the android opens his arms provocatively, openly calling the winged enemy to a close quarters fight. Filled with hatred, the colossal creature dives in a brutal charge, roaring aggressively with its mouth open. The impact of the beast against the ground kicks up a massive curtain of dust and rocks, creating a shockwave across the arid terrain. When the dust settles, the boy is revealed to be holding the giant monster's beak with just his bare hands, digging his fingers into the creature's scales. Demonstrating absolute superiority, he coldly states that at such a short distance, the creature's speed is useless. Using the raw strength of his robotic body, the young man spins the colossal dragon and slams it violently against the stone ground, ending the confrontation. Already walking with the beast's carcass slung over his shoulder, the protagonist stops in his tracks when he notices the sudden presence of someone on the horizon. Staring at a blonde, uniformed android, he asks gruffly what that guy is doing in his area. The newcomer calmly explains that he just detected the sound of a battle nearby and decided to investigate the source of the noise. Observing the dead dragon being carried, the blonde man mockingly asks if Rihito is still wasting his time on this endless hunt for aliens. Firm in his purpose, the boy defends his actions, arguing that hunting monsters is exactly why they were originally created. With an ironic smile and a gesture of his hand, the rival scoffs at this logic, asking what the point is of protecting a world where humans are already completely extinct. Hearing the mention of humans, the protagonist's eyes widen, on the verge of revealing the recent existence of a survivor. The image of Sina's face flashes through his mind, making him swallow his words for fear of putting the girl in danger in the hands of strangers if the secret got out. Noticing the hesitation and suspicious silence, the blonde android furrows his brow, demanding to know what he was about to say. Looking away to hide the truth, the young man plays it off, claiming it was nothing important and that he was just thinking about his next tactical moves. Turning to leave, the visitor scoffs, recommending moderation in his fights, and warns him not to come crying if he ends up attracting the attention of the alien leader, Grazes. As he watches the other android walk away through the sandy ruins, Rihito clenches his free fist tightly, suppressing his own frustration. Analyzing his own condition, Rihito comes to the conclusion that he is still too weak and needs to keep getting stronger no matter what. A deafening roar shatters his line of thought, and the boy turns his head in alarm at the dust rising into the air. The brutal impact makes the ground tremble intensely, causing the android to take a few steps back and anxiously ask what on earth that was. In the middle of the cloud of sand and loose rocks, a grotesque horned humanoid silhouette reveals itself, observing the young man from above. It was the same mysterious alien from the base, now standing in the desert, displaying its monstrous appearance. Recognizing the imminent danger, the protagonist grits his teeth and mutters the enemy's name, his eyes overflowing with hatred. A dramatic flashback appears in his mind, showing this exact hooded monster piercing the chest of a scientist in a white lab coat in a burning laboratory. Hatred takes over the android, and he charges forward, unleashing a ferocious attack, screaming and accusing the creature of being the one who murdered his beloved professor. In a frantic impulse, the boy delivers a brutal energy-infused punch aimed directly at the humanoid beast's torso with all his might. However, the creature just raises one of its hands and blocks the devastating blow with absurd ease, making Rito's eyes widen in complete shock. Refusing to accept the power difference, the young man unleashes a frantic barrage of energy-infused punches and kicks, screaming in frustration. A huge curtain of dust covers the battlefield as the protagonist realizes with despair that the monster's armored skin hasn't suffered a single scratch. Completely unharmed and unfazed, the alien looks down with contempt at the panting boy and asks in a dry tone if that was all the hunter had to offer. The initial shock of hearing the beast speak is enormous, but the boy soon deduces that this monster must be a very high-ranking alien to possess human-level intelligence. Summoning his maximum power, the android accumulates a massive amount of blue energy in his hands and announces that he's about to show his final move. The flash of the Death Star cannon dominates the scene, firing a destructive beam of pure concentrated power. When the intense light subsides, the alien remains in the same spot, with only a little smoke rising from its body, showing no apparent injuries. The protagonist's mind goes blank, and he mutters in disbelief that it's impossible for even his most powerful technique to have failed. Faced with the useless attack, the horned creature cracks a wide, sadistic smile, showing sharp teeth as it clenches its fists. Prepared for the worst, the young man assumes a defensive stance, telling himself that the monster's counterattack is coming. In a split second, the beast charges forward and lands a direct, brutal punch to the android's face, sending his body flying. The boy's body bounces across the desert rocks until it slams violently against a rock structure, letting out an agonizing groan of pain. Slumped on the ground with blurry vision, he hears the heavy footsteps of the enemy slowly approaching while listening to the monster's ironic praise, stating that he's a little better than the others of his kind. Badly injured, the boy tries to focus his eyes on his tormentor and watches the villain stop right in front of him, shrouded in dust. With an arrogant posture, the alien declares that he liked the young man's audacity and tells him to get stronger to challenge him again and cry once more. The boy's body loses its strength and collapses onto the sand as he uselessly tries to reach out to the departing beast, and his consciousness finally fades. The narrative cuts to the room in Rihito's base, revealing the morning silence illuminating the mess inside. Still lying on the couch, covered up to her neck, Sina comments that the boy was already gone when she woke up and idly wonders when he'll be back from his mission. Without any warning, the girl is suddenly enveloped by the same intense magical glow that brought her to this apocalyptic future, making her scream, not understanding what was happening. The flash of light blinds her, and in an instant, the student is thrown through the ceiling, landing right back in the comfort of her own bed in the year 2025. Stunned by the sudden landing, the girl blinks a few times, processing the familiar environment around her. As she sits up and observes her tidy desk, she realizes with relief that this is indeed her room. The young woman sits on her bed and looks around anxiously, questioning herself if she had really returned, and if perhaps it was all just a very realistic dream. However, upon checking her phone screen, she reads Rito's messages and sees that the device still displays their conversation, confirming that the entire apocalyptic adventure was real. Staring at the digital keyboard, she reflects that if she tries to reply to the message, logic says she shouldn't be teleported back to the dangerous future. The girl hesitates, sitting on the mattress alone in the silent room, waiting for some magical phenomenon to occur again. Overcome by an anxiety attack, she throws the phone on the bed and slaps her own forehead, stating that just being back home is reason enough to celebrate. After calming her nerves, she hugs her knees in a reflective posture, remembering her journey 100 years into the future. To hide the guilt of leaving her savior alone, she nervously wrings her hands while insisting out loud that she doesn't miss the android or anything like that. The cell phone on the mattress vibrates, interrupting her train of thought and displaying the time on its lit screen. Curious, she immediately picks up the phone with a smile, thinking it's a message from Rihito. The notification reveals just a simple text message in the app, sent by her mother. Utterly disappointed, Sana lets out a heavy sigh and throws herself back on the bed, complaining about her own frustrated expectations. Reading her mother's text demanding she come home, the girl quietly asks herself what on earth she was expecting to find there anyway. Only then does her brain put the pieces together, and panic resurfaces as she reads her mother complaining that she had slept out without notice again. Leaving her room with the phone in hand, the student breathes a sigh of relief that at least her mom didn't make a huge scene about her disappearance. Standing in front of the living room door, she shrugs, trying to come up with a good excuse to justify where she spent the entire night. Mustering her courage, the young woman pushes the door open and announces her arrival with an awkward smile, trying to soften the impending lecture. At the entrance of the house, Sina's father is putting on his shoes and turns to greet his daughter with an expression that says he's already expecting an explanation. Putting his keys aside, the older man comments in a serious tone that her mother was quite worried about her being away all night yesterday without any news. Awkwardly rubbing her cheek, the girl tries to dodge the question, vaguely stating that a lot of things happened. A flash of memory appears in her mind, where images of graphs about time travel research flash by without making much sense to her layman's brain. Due to this confusing memory, the young woman concludes that the best alternative would be to talk to her father about the text on her fur phone before it's too late. Extending the cell phone toward her father, she stutters a bit and asks him to read the messages, affirming that all of it really happened. In parallel, the narrative returns to the ruined future, where night has completely covered the scene of total destruction under the starry sky. Gravely injured from the fight with the horned monster, Rihito leans against the metal wall of his base, cursing his own pain. Dragging his feet, the panning android quietly announces that he's finally home, as if to justify his prolonged absence. Upon entering the main room, however, he finds it completely dark and empty, with the blankets on the couch untouched, prompting a confused murmur from the boy as he calls out for Sina. The protagonist's worn and broken body reaches its limit, and he begins to collapse onto the cold floor of the room due to his internal injuries. The fall is violent, causing the young man to hit his face on the floor along with his cell phone, which slides across the room with its screen faintly blinking. Trembling with excruciating pain in his chest, Rihito spots the device on the floor, and his mind wanders to the conversation that started this whole time anomaly. With great effort, he drags his injured robotic arm and manages to grab the cell phone firmly in his hands. The cracked screen displays the chat history, revealing that the boy's last message said he wanted to see the student and needed to know where she was. Pressing the buttons with difficulty, he tries to stay focused while grumbling that this is the only chance he has to fix things. Almost losing consciousness, the android murmurs the girl's name as if she were his only hope in the midst of the chaos. Back in the year 2025, the atmosphere is peaceful in the dining room of Sina's family, who are enjoying their evening meal together. Her father lifts his chopsticks to pick up a piece of meat and thoughtfully asks if the story she told was really true. Curious and skeptical at the same time, he asks his youngest daughter if she really wants him to believe this story about communicating with someone from 100 years in the future through a cell phone. Chewing her own food, the girl shrugs and states matter of factly that although it's very hard to believe, she knows it's true. Silence dominates the room for a few seconds as the man processes his daughter's words and stares intently at the empty plate in front of him. Breaking the tense mood, the father suggests that he could keep her phone for a while to investigate the situation better. The girl's pink device rests alone in the center of the table as the student ponders if this would be a smart decision right now. Holding her face in concern, she silently confesses that the big problem with handing over the phone would be not being able to see any future messages Rihito might send. On the other hand, reason says that if she passes the problem to her father, maybe he can find some logical way to explain the time travel or create methods to prevent more sudden disappearances. While the young woman was frying her brain cells, the mysterious atmosphere completely collapses when her father smiles, joking if this wasn't all just a teenage phase with an imaginary boyfriend, leaving his daughter indignant at the stupid insinuation. Pointing an authoritative finger, Sina tells her father he can borrow the phone, but on the condition that he figures out how this time travel craziness works. With a confident smile on his face, the man readily agrees and asks his daughter to leave this mystery in his hands. Chewing her food calmly, the girl reflects to herself that Rito is probably fine, since the android is extremely strong. The next morning, the sun illuminates the quiet streets as students walk towards school. The student follows her morning route with a slightly distant and sleepy expression. Suddenly, a dark figure suspiciously dashes past her on the sidewalk. The sudden movement startles the young woman, making her jump slightly. Without any warning, a blonde friend jumps on Sina's back, excitedly shouting her name. While the girl laughs at the prank, the protagonist tells her to stop and confesses, out of breath, that she thought it was an alien attack. Confused by the bizarre response, the friend questions the mention of aliens, but soon figures out what it could be. Trying to cover her slip-up, Sina invents that she watched a movie about space monsters the night before, making her friend comment that this kind of show isn't really her style. Just to end the topic, the girl justifies that she was in the mood for something different and pulls her friend along so they won't be late. The school bell rings, echoing through the immense school buildings under the clear blue sky. Inside the classroom, illuminated by the morning sun, students chat before the lesson begins. Resting her face in her hand while staring into space, Sina gets lost in her own thoughts, wondering what Rihito might be doing at that exact moment. The hours fly by, and soon it's the long-awaited lunch break, with students arranging their desks. Her blonde friend approaches Sina, bringing her lunchbox so they can eat together. Excitedly, her friend asks if she saw a new video online, but the protagonist just agrees vaguely and disinterestedly. Noticing her lack of attention, the friend tries to bring up the Alien movie, receiving only a mumble in response. Tired of this distant attitude, the blonde gets straight to the point and asks if the girl suffered a heartbreak, making Sina spit out her juice in shock. With her face completely red, the student wipes her mouth and nervously asks where her friend got such a ridiculous idea. As justification, her friend points out that she was absent the day before without telling anyone and spent the whole morning with her head in the clouds, indicating that something shocking happened. Waving her hands frantically, the young woman denies the broken heart theory under the suspicious gaze of her friend, who continues to trust her intuition. With a chopstick stuck in a sausage, the blonde changes her tune and decides to drop the interrogation for now. She ends the discussion with a smile, saying it was nothing important, bringing immediate relief to the protagonist. The evening paints the school buildings in an orange hue, marking the end of another school day. During her lonely walk through the streets illuminated by the sunset, the young woman lets out a long, heavy sigh. Remembering her friend's support for a fake romance, the girl puts her hand on her face, frustrated by the embarrassing misunderstanding. Annoyed with the android for all this disruption to her school routine, she clenches her fist and promises to give him a huge lecture when they meet again. The anger quickly passes, and a melancholic expression takes over her face as she wonders if Rihito is worried about her sudden disappearance. Imagining the boy desperately searching for her amidst a pile of defeated aliens only increases the guilt in the student's chest. Overcome by a mix of agony and frustration, she grabs her head in the middle of the street, screaming that this uncertainty is driving her crazy. An obvious idea strikes her, and she deduces that the simplest way to solve this is to just send a text message to clear things up. Excited by the plan, the young woman runs towards her house, determined to ask her father if he managed to find out anything useful about the device. As she walks through the front door, she announces her arrival to the familiar environment. Already in the hallway of her father's dark office, the girl opens the door, calling for him to talk about the smartphone's discoveries. The room is completely empty, leading her to question if the man was still working at this hour. On the computer desk, the pink cell phone screen suddenly lights up, notifying the mysterious arrival of a new message. The display shows an urgent text from Rihito, asking where she is and stating that he needs to see her. Reading the notification from a distance, the student panics and concludes that she'll time travel again if she looks at it properly. Afraid of disappearing off the map, she silently takes a few steps back, keeping a safe distance from the lit device on the desk. After a few tense seconds of watching the phone from afar, the girl confusedly notices that absolutely nothing magical has happened. More relieved, she deduces that the simple act of receiving a text from the future doesn't trigger an instant teleport. In an attempt to understand the rules of this bizarre phenomenon, the young woman speculates if she needs to open or reply to the message for the time travel to occur. Holding the device firmly with a determined expression, she reflects on what would be the smartest course of action in the face of this dangerous dilemma. Shaking her head to banish the crazy ideas, she scolds herself for even considering going back to an extremely lethal place. The harsh reality hits her hard, reminding her that this monster-ridden, desolate world in the year 20 125 is humanity's terrible future. In the darkness of the office, Sina realizes with a heavy heart that if nothing changes in the present, everyone on the planet will end up gone. A spark of courage crosses her thoughts, shifting her focus from pure fear to a real possibility of trying to fix things. The girl realizes that if she can learn more about the apocalypse, it might be possible to prepare humanity in advance and prevent that global tragedy. To justify her own audacity, she tries to convince herself that she should return at least one more time, just to say a proper goodbye to the sad boy who saved her. Completely decided, the student quickly types a text asking him to send her one more message. Pressing the send button in the app, the young woman silently prays that her words can cross the barrier of a century. In the devastated future, Rihito is still lying completely unconscious on the metal floor of his base's room. The protagonist's body remains motionless after the beating, while his cell phone rests inactive a few inches from his fallen hand. Slowly, the boy's consciousness begins to return, and he lets out a low groan of pain as he tries to force his body to move. Placing a hand on his aching head, he sits up on the floor with great difficulty and observes his surroundings, trying to remember how he got there. The brutal memories of the combat return in a flash, bringing the vision of the hooded alien and the harsh realization that he had been humiliatingly defeated. Overwhelmed by absurd frustration, the young man punches the floor violently, cursing the situation. Sunk in the feeling of powerlessness from when he was face to face with his creator's murderer, the android lowers his gaze, accepting his own failure and weakness. With his pride wounded and his body damaged, he grits his teeth, declaring that his current power level is still utterly useless. Standing again, the protagonist establishes that he desperately needs to level up, because without defeating that monstrous lackey, it would be impossible to beat the invasion leader, Grazis. The sharp sound of a notification cuts through the facility's silence, accompanied by the sudden glow of the cell phone screen lying on the rocks. The unexpected light immediately draws the young android's gaze downward. With a cautious movement, he picks up the device, wondering in amazement who could be sending something in this situation. The display then reveals Sina's unusual request, begging for a new text message from him. Without understanding the exact logic behind the request, the boy tilts his head in confusion, trying to guess the human's objective. With his eyes fixed on the screen with extreme seriousness, Rihito tries to come up with a relevant topic to reply with that would make some sense to her. In the year 2025, the student waits anxiously, kneeling on an armchair in the dimly lit room. The excessive delay in the response makes the girl restless, causing her to nervously swing her feet in the air as she waits for a sign. Finally, the app's characteristic ringtone sounds, breaking the torturous silence. A radiant smile forms on Sina's face as she joyfully celebrates the arrival of the long-awaited temporal message. However, her joy gives way to deep confusion when she reads the boy's direct and random question. "Do you like androids?" Before she could process the bizarre meaning of that question, the device explodes in a blinding magical flash, making the young woman scream in terror. Completely swallowed by the blue beam of light, the student is violently pulled through a vortex in space-time, falling aimlessly straight into the dangers of the apocalyptic future once again. The setting sun illuminates the scene of destruction as the girl appears in the middle of the dust, confirming that the time travel happened again. With the impact of the landing, she falls awkwardly onto a metal structure, letting out a groan of pain. Observing the rubble under the orange light, she confirms to herself that this wasn't a dream, and that she really did return to the future. Despair quickly takes over as the student notices she didn't appear in the same place as before and wonders where Rihito's base would be. Letting out a heavy sigh, she figures complaining won't do any good and decides to look for a familiar place, hoping the boy is also looking for her. The darkness of night dominates the city as the young woman walks alone over the fuselage of a destroyed ship. Physical exhaustion takes its toll, causing the girl to stop walking to try and catch her breath, panting. Reflecting on her own choices, she wonders if coming back was a terrible idea, and what she would do if she couldn't find the android. Suddenly, a loud noise of falling metal echoes right behind her, breaking the tense silence. With an apprehensive look, she tries to convince herself it was just a piece falling on its own in the wreckage. The next instant, a mysterious hand touches her shoulder in the pitch darkness. Terrified by the sudden contact, the girl lets out a piercing scream of pure terror. Trying to break free at all costs, she struggles violently, demanding the intruder let her go. To her surprise, Rihito's familiar voice asks her to calm down as he holds the young woman's arm firmly. Recognizing her savior, she immediately stops struggling and looks back, still a bit confused by the situation. The android appears, illuminated by the moonlight, holding the girl with an exhausted expression. Her eyes widen as she confirms it's really her friend there in front of her. Greatly relieved, the student collapses to the ground, thanking the heavens for finally finding him. Kneeling in front of her, the boy says he should be the one saying that, as he was worried sick, not knowing where she had gotten to. Observing the injuries on his body, the young woman tries to form a sentence. Interrupting her, he suggests they talk more when they get back to the base. Without giving her a chance to refuse, the boy lifts the human into his arms with the greatest of ease. Completely caught off guard, the girl's face turns red, and she lets out a confused murmur. Holding her firmly, the protagonist simply announces they're leaving now. In an explosive movement, he darts across the uneven terrain, kicking up dust and leaving the ruins behind. The absurd speed of his run cuts through the night air as they leap over the wreckage. Due to the strong wind hitting her face, the student has to squeeze her eyes shut. With a gigantic leap, the android crosses a chasm between structures under the bright glow of the full moon. Opening her eyes, the girl observes the night landscape from high above and comments in awe about the incredible view. Keeping his focus on the path, the young man gives a small smile upon noticing his passenger's excitement. Now safely inside the base, the girl relaxes on the couch while the boy listens, leaning against a bookshelf. She finishes her explanation, telling him that's exactly what happened when she returned to the past. Absorbing the information, the android concludes that she received his message and was pulled back here. Showing him the phone screen, the young woman asks what he was thinking, sending that text asking if she liked androids. Sitting on the edge of the table, he ignores the embarrassing question and speculates that there must be specific rules for this time travel. Gesturing intelligently, he elaborates on his theory. When a message arrives and she views it, the teleportation happens, and the duration in the future is 24 hours. The student agrees with the logic, pointing out that it really has been that much time since she went back home. After solving the mystery, a silence falls as the boy just stares intently at the human. Bothered by his intense gaze, she asks if there's something on her face. With a gentle smile, the protagonist deduces that if she sent a message to come back, it's because she wanted to see him too. The direct statement makes the girl's face burn with embarrassment instantly. Waving her hands desperately, she denies the claim, shouting that she just wanted to understand what was happening to her own body. The harsh response shatters the boy's expectations, and he immediately deflates with a look of pure disappointment. Noticing she hurt the android's feelings, the young woman tells him to stop with the lost puppy face, because it's making her feel guilty. Regaining his spirits in the blink of an eye, he smiles excitedly, remembering that at least they'll have the next 24 hours together. Not knowing how to handle all that energy, the student just agrees awkwardly. Very excited, the boy suggests they just sleep for now and think about a plan the next morning. Pointing to the soft furniture, he says she can use the couch as a bed again. Standing in the middle of the room, he waits for her response, while the girl finally pays attention to the deplorable state of his clothes and face. Narrowing her eyes suspiciously, she questions why he's so beaten up. She points a finger, accusing him of not even taking care of his own wounds, and the boy plays it off, saying he didn't have time for that. Taking the initiative, the young woman orders him to get a first aid kit so she can bandage him up herself. The scene cuts to the student cleaning his wounds with cotton and medicine. As she applies antiseptic to his arm, she asks him to be honest and tell her what he's been up to. Avoiding eye contact, the protagonist lies, saying it was just a standard alien hunt, and tells her not to worry about it. Seeing through the obvious lie, she shoots him a death glare, showing she didn't believe a single word. Clearing his throat to change the subject, the boy shyly asks if he could call her here again in the future. The sudden question catches the girl off guard, making her look up in confusion. Finishing the bandage, she grumbles that they just figured out the time travel rules and questions if he's going to ignore the risks. Sitting next to him while putting things away, she sighs in resignation and says she's not against the idea but demands that he only message her on her days off. Scratching his cheek in confusion, the android repeats the term, days off, not understanding the concept. Gesturing excitedly, she explains that although it might not seem like it, she has a very busy life with school and other things in the past. The word school causes even more confusion in the boy's mind as he tries to process the information. Not wanting to prolong the explanation, he agrees, saying he didn't quite understand but asks if it's okay to call her on those specific days. Giving his bandaged arm a friendly pat, the young woman confirms that if he follows that rule, it's all good. At that moment, a blue holographic panel appears in the air with a technological sound. The boy thanks her for the bandage and asks with interest what her days off are. Exactly. With a hand on her chin, she thinks he's taking the idea very seriously, but replies that they are usually Saturdays and Sundays. Staring at the blue screen, the girl is amazed to find that the calendar for that month in the future is identical to the one in the present. Pointing to the numbers, she asks him to confirm if the current day isn't Friday the 16th. Consulting the integrated system in his arm, he informs her that it's actually Friday the 25th. Surprised by the coincidence, she observes that the days of the week ended up aligning perfectly in both timelines. With a gentle look, the boy points out that thanks to this detail, they'll be able to spend the entire weekend together. Collapsing backward onto the couch, the student hides her face in her hands, blaming herself for finding the idea fun when this whole situation is dangerously insane. Staring at the ceiling, she laments coming here with the goal of changing the tragic fate of the world but recognizes the real danger. Since although Rihito promises to protect her, there are monsters out there strong enough to leave him at the brink. Tremors run through the girl's body as she questions if she'll really make it back alive from this place. With her gaze lowered, she seriously considers stopping her travels to this dangerous future. Noticing the young woman's state, the android puts on his jacket and comments that he's a little worried about her. He calls the student's name, calmly asking if something is wrong. As if having an epiphany, the boy suddenly smiles and asks if the problem is just hunger. The absurd assumption completely breaks the tense mood, making the girl scream in annoyance that the reason for her fear has nothing to do with that. Completely red with embarrassment, she fumes due to her companion's cluelessness. The protagonist lets out a discreet chuckle by the door, and the girl nervously demands that he not laugh at her despair. With a gentle smile, he apologizes for the misunderstanding and announces he'll prepare a meal for her immediately. The young woman steps forward with her hand outstretched, pointing out that he's all banged up and doesn't need to go to that trouble. Unconcerned with his own condition, the boy states that it doesn't matter and that he just wants to see her eat something. Alone in the room, the student reflects in amazement that even in his injured state, he still insists on cooking for her. Feeling a tightness in her chest, she looks up at the metal ceiling, searching for a way to repay such kindness. Under the blue light from the window, the girl murmurs, upset, that she wishes she could do something for him too. The sentimental mood vanishes the instant 2 bowls of purple soup with tentacles are served on the dining table. Already seated at the small table under the dim light, the two stare at the generous portions of that questionable space meal. Holding her spoon, the young woman musters the courage and questions why he keeps fighting so hard, even when he ends up completely injured. The boy stops with his utensil in midair and confesses in surprise that it was a very sudden question. Very understanding, she gestures with her hands, telling him he doesn't have to talk about it if he doesn't want to. But the boy replies that his duty is to fight the aliens to protect the population. Confused by this logic, the student asks who he intends to save if all the humans on Earth are already extinct. Without losing his composure, the android confirms the fact and explains that for his kind, the mission to protect people comes above all else, and that he also has an extra motivation. The protagonist's gaze darkens as he seriously reveals that his true goal is to avenge his professor. Realizing the weight of those words, the girl lowers her head and apologizes for touching such a deep wound. He quickly raises his bandaged arms, assuring her it's okay and that he just needs to become much stronger. Giving an enthusiastic wink, the young man comments that luckily, he was equipped with a practical experience point system. The human's index finger rests on her chin as she repeats the term, experience, trying to understand how that would work in real life. To illustrate the situation, a holographic panel appears around him, proving that defeating monsters grants direct points. A mental image of a video game pops into the student's imagination, and she praises the system, finding it all incredible. Very proud, the boy smiles with a hand on his face, confirming that this feature was created by his professor exclusively for his use. With the flames of determination burning in his eyes, the protagonist decrees that he will level up until he has enough power to exterminate Grazes. An aura of vengeance surrounds the boy as he reinforces in a firm voice that this is his life's goal. Completely breaking the heavy mood, he suddenly grabs the human's hand and suggests they go alien hunting together, leaving the girl hysterical, not understanding how he came to that conclusion. Forced to walk through the sandy ruins, she listens to her partner argue that since she traveled to the future, it would be better to take a walk than stay cooped up in the base. Chewing on the tip of her spoon, the young woman narrows her eyes and points out the obvious, reminding him that the world out there is a lethal minefield. Beating his own chest with blind confidence, the android guarantees that no matter what happens, he won't let any harm come to her. Despite the heroic promise, the girl crosses her arms, still very hesitant about becoming monster food. With a bright look and an encouraging smile, the boy insists on the invitation, calling her name very excitedly. Worn down by exhaustion and his insistence, the student puts her hand to her forehead and sighs, finally agreeing to accompany him on the journey. A burst of happiness hits the boy, who raises his arms, celebrating the success of his risky proposal. Hiding his own intentions, the protagonist smiles, satisfied to have read an old book on how to make friends, and internally celebrates the chance to show her his cool side. Resigned to her own fate, the girl lets out a sigh and warns in a dark tone that if she ends up a goner, she'll come back to haunt him. With unshakable tranquility, he simply replies that it will never happen. The duo then begins their trek through the giant rocks of the canyon under the clear sky of that devastated land. Suddenly, a loud noise of sliding rocks echoes from above, making the human jump in fright and let out a small scream. Staring at the small landslide, the boy finds his partner's panic amusing and mockingly says it was just normal debris and that she doesn't need to be so jumpy. Furious at the joke, the student points a finger in her companion's face, yelling that he might be used to this nightmare, but she loves with her nerves on edge, expecting an attack at any second. Pounding his fists firmly, he tries to calm the situation, repeating the promise that he will act as a perfect shield. With a tearful expression, the young woman murmurs that she understands his strength, but that doesn't negate the terror she feels. Stomping away angrily, she turns her back on her partner, grumbling that he should have more consideration for the feelings of normal people. The android gets a sweat drop on his head, completely confused, trying to process the practical meaning of the term, people's feelings. The exploration continues through the rocky canyon, where only the dead silence of the destroyed city keeps the two company. No matter how much they walked through the rocky terrain, the only available view was that of an endless desert covered in rubble. The local fauna was limited to a few small rats scurrying through the debris, melancholically proving that humanity had vanished from the map. Observing the empty vastness, the girl quietly states that humans were really wiped from existence, receiving only a silent confirmation from the boy. Staring at the vastness of the blue sky, she clenches her fists with determination and promises herself that she will change this dark future, no matter the cost. This newfound courage is immediately tested when a frightening growl emerges from the shadows in the nearby ruins. A huge alien wolf covered in purple crystals leaps out, roaring furiously at the intruders. Panic takes over the girl, who retreats, letting out a scream of terror as she faces the wild beast. With perfect reflexes, Rihito pulls the girl by the arm, getting her out of the path of the deadly blow. The monster's sharp claws slash through the air, passing just inches from the student's face while the android keeps her safe under his protection. Holding the human against his chest, the protagonist fixes a murderous glare on the creature and assures her in a low voice that everything is under control. Without letting the young woman go, he warns with extreme coldness that the beast won't lay a single finger on her. The colossal wolf lands heavily on the rocks, gritting its teeth at the duo, who remain motionless in the canyon. Through his optical system, the boy analyzes the enemy's composition and deduces that the creature has gone berserk due to an excess of energy from the ores in its body. Focusing his bionic gaze on the target, the android quickly concludes that this opponent won't be a real problem. Assuming a defensive combat stance, he provokes the alien, openly calling the beast to a fight. Answering the call, the beast charges forward, tearing up the sandy ground with its claws at an impressive speed. When the monstrous bite is about to hit its target, the young man simply spins his body, escaping the brutal attack unscathed. He tells his partner to watch out for the flying debris but calmly reaffirms that the situation is still under control. The monster tries a new charge, launching its massive body through the air in a desperate lunge. With absurd lightness, the boy slides under the beast, dodging the claw that slashes through the empty air just above his head. Uncontrolled and furious, the crystalline creature spins on its axis, preparing a vertical slashing attack from top to bottom. Using only his bandaged forearms, Rihito firmly blocks the giant paw and mockingly asks if that was all the enemy had to offer. A few meters away, the student clutches her clothes while watching the exchange of blows, completely impressed. With her eyes shining with admiration, she smiles in relief as she sees firsthand just how overwhelming her savior's strength is on the battlefield. Without missing a beat, Rihito kicks the crystalline alien into the air, brutally sending it flying across the rocky terrain. The giant wolf lands on its feet, emanating a violent purple energy and furiously displaying its claws. The beast charges forward viciously, launching several sharp crystals in the boy's direction. The sharp projectiles cut through the air, but the android remains motionless, calmly tracking their lethal trajectory. Frightened, the student screams her partner's name in desperation, fearing he'll be torn apart. A confident smile appears on Rihito's face as he maintains his unshackable posture. With an agile move, he bats the first crystal away with his arm, showing that the offensive doesn't faze him. In a relentless sequence, the young man dodges and deflects each of the deadly spikes with his bare hands. As an immediate counterattack, he snatches one of the crystals from the air, gripping it tightly. The beast watches the maneuver, stunned, with no time to react to its adversary's speed. Rihito returns the projectile, launching it with extreme precision as he sends the blow right back to its sender. The brutal impact hits the monster head on, embedding the purple spike in its armored body. The alien lets out an agonizing howl as the unstable energy from its own crystal begins to consume it. A massive explosion engulfs the battlefield, kicking up a thick cloud of dust and rocks. The curtain of smoke slowly dissipates, revealing the unscathed android standing amidst the debris. From the top of a safe structure, the girl anxiously asks if the enemy has finally been defeated. Rihito keeps his gaze fixed on the smoke and seriously warns that the fight isn't over yet. From the depths of the crater, the beast's monstrous hand grabs the edge of the rocks. The alien emerges unharmed, and the boy explains that common attacks are useless against this creature, because of its rapid regeneration. The student swallows hard, processing the terrible reality that the wolf is almost immortal. The monster displays its wounds, healing instantly through a dark magical light. The girl grabs the android's arm in a panic, hysterically questioning what they should do against a creature like that. Seeing the boy's calmness, she screams at him to take the situation seriously, as this is no time for tranquility. He places a hand on his own chest, assuring the young woman that she doesn't need to despair, as he has a strategy ready. Recap takes a step forward, informing her that the only logical solution to the problem is to use brute force. He extends his open hand firmly, preparing the technique that will finish the beast. The crystalline monster attempts one last furious charge, leaping towards its target. With lethal precision, the android points his glowing arm directly at the crazed beast's face. A sphere of pure blue energy condenses in his palm as he coldly states that the creature will just serve as his experience points. The thunderous Death Star cannon tears through the heavens, pulverizing the giant wolf in a destructive pillar of blue light. When the silence returns, only smoke and dust remain, and the boy confirms with satisfaction that a single shot was enough. Smiling confidently, he turns to the human and states that the display was so they could become better friends. The expectation of a compliment is immediately shattered by the student's furious screams. Startled by the violent reaction, Recap doesn't understand the reason for so much hostility after saving the day. The girl yells, indignant, that he should have used the overwhelming technique from the start instead of scaring her with a prolonged fight. The boy blinks in confusion, feeling wronged. He patiently justifies that the Death Star cannon consumes a lot of energy, forcing him to ensure a direct hit at the right moment. Sina's narrowed eyes show that she hasn't completely bought that flimsy excuse. Recap raises his hands, solemnly swearing that he's telling the truth, and that he didn't want to prolong the battle. Pressured, he takes a step back, assuring her that he wasn't showing off or going easy on it. He points a finger, insisting he was taking the combat very seriously, and the girl finally seems to accept his explanation. In the android's mind, the book's tactic of showing off one's reliable side to make friends proved to be a huge sham. The mental book that guided him is shredded by the girl's indignant thoughts, who sense the disaster from a mile away. Enraged, she tells him to throw the manual away, but he desperately clings to the idea, shouting that it's his Bible. The argument is cut short by a blue holographic notification about gaining extra experience for protecting a human. The holographic display alerts Recap to the unexpected level up, leaving him confused by this new notification. Observing the screen cautiously, he silently analyzes the message stating that Sina's presence granted additional experience bonuses. Noticing her partner is distracted, the young woman asks what happened, and he quickly gives a vague reply that it was nothing serious, just that he needed to think a bit about the next step. Innocently, the student questions if they were still going to continue the hunt after all that commotion. Recap smiles warmly at the young woman, claiming that their adventure has only just begun. He gestures for them to move forward while the young woman follows, grumbling about having to walk again. In a matter of minutes, a slaughter begins. Recap obliterates several different monsters without giving them a chance to attack. The scene is littered with dead beasts, and the android nonchalantly asks who's next. From the top of a cliff, the human watches everything, astonished by her partner's absurd ease in dispatching any kind of threat. With his hand accumulating destructive energy, he ends the last confrontation with ease. Another lightning, fast shot from the Death Star cannon swallows the enemy horde, clearing the area completely. The notification interface appears once more, announcing another experience gain in the same afternoon. The message announces the boy's rapid progression, and he stares into the air, surprised by this bizarre realization. Scratching his chin, Recap analyzes that his progress would normally require exterminating many more enemies before achieving such a rapid advancement, confirming his theory about her. Staring at Sina, the boy smiles, deducing that the increase in his stats was with the human's help. He clasps his hands in a bizarre, smiling manner, and soon realizes the manual taught him about this too. Observing the boy talking to himself in a dramatic pose, the student looks at her companion and asks if he's gone crazy. Snapping back to reality, he apologizes and informs her that his stats have increased, and the young woman takes note of the information. Recap proudly clenches his fists and says his body will become increasingly tougher and more adaptable as the young woman watches him. Sina crosses her arms, doubtful about the evolution, and questions if the altered parameters only affect his physique or something more, and her companion nods no. The young man approaches, explaining that depending on the gains, new methods and tactics are also developed. The student is impressed and startled, asking if the destructive beam he used in the fight with the monster was one of them, and her companion nods in agreement. The android states that the power he used in battle was a built-in feature, not something that needed to be unlocked. With her eyes narrowed, trying to guess the evolutions, the young woman starts getting ideas about his fights in her head. Sina nods and tells the boy that it reminded her of her games, Rihito listens with a look of confusion and doesn't seem to agree, not knowing what the term meant, leaving his partner in shock. Having never dealt with a video game, he admits to never having seen one, but says his creator explained something similar to him. Keeping his arm flexed, the boy says he has no experience with those tasks, so he doesn't understand them. The human, excited to teach, takes her cell phone out of her pocket and calls the boy over to play with her. Rihito gets too close to Sina's face, leaving the girl completely red and desperate about the lack of personal space. Realizing his excessive proximity, the boy immediately backs away, apologizing for his action while the young woman breathes a sigh of relief. Still processing the shock, the student mentally grumbles that he shouldn't invade her space like that, since he has an absurdly handsome face. The tense atmosphere soon dissipates, giving way to the calm sound of waves gently breaking on the light sand of the beach. Observing the cell phone in his companion's hands, the android curiously asks if he could try playing too and receives a positive response. Handing over the pink device, the human patiently explains that since there's no internet in this apocalyptic future, the game works completely offline. The screen displays a very colorful little game where the objective is to defeat small space viruses, and she warns him not to get mad if he can't beat it on the first try. Full of confidence, the protagonist guarantees he won't get stressed at all, because being an android, he'll turn even this challenge into experience points. Within a few seconds of trying, the boy has already mastered the controls, celebrating that the game is actually very easy, leaving his partner pouting at his sudden skill. This hobers is short-lived, as his character ends up perishing on the next stage, making the boy ask for another chance with wide eyes. Staring at the bright defeat screen, he begs for one more try, completely focused on beating the machine. What seems simple becomes a real nightmare, and the boy racks up consecutive failures, getting more and more stressed by the absurd difficulty. Overtaken by intense competitiveness, the young man frantically mashes the buttons as his initial tranquility completely disappears under a nervous sweat. Curious about his exaggerated tension, the student asks if he's close to finishing the level, receiving a desperate shout in response that he's very close to victory. Dramatically raising the phone to the sky, the android declares war on the app, promising to turn that level into experience, no matter the cost. Observing her companion's exaggerated determination, the girl rests her face in her hand, finding all that dedication very cute and harmless. With an extremely focused gaze, the boy admits that the digital enemy is truly formidable and cannot be underestimated at all. His mind projects an epic battle where he himself faces the game's big, round boss, applying all his lethal real-world combat tactics. Noticing the boy's growing tension, the human tells him to calm down, advising him not to rush, and to just focus on getting past that part peacefully. Breaking out in a cold sweat in front of the glowing screen, the boy murmurs that if he can survive this virus attack, he'll finally beat the level successfully. In a quick and precise move, he presses the final command on the digital display with his thumb. The precise action results in the defeat of the little purple monster, securing a hard-fought victory in the decisive match. A super colorful level, complete screen flashes on the phone, announcing the persistent player's absolute triumph. Still not believing his own unprecedented achievement, the protagonist looks up in amazement, asking if he really managed to beat the machine. Clapping with sincere joy, the student congratulates her friend for finally finishing the difficult game. A proud and very satisfied smile takes over the boy's face as he savors the new feeling of accomplishment in a video game. Taking the device back, the young woman jokes about her own superior skills in the app and warns that their game time has already hit the 1-hour mark. Pointing to the illuminated horizon, she alerts him that the sun is almost setting, leaving the android completely astonished at how quickly time flew by. Apologizing for getting too carried away with the cell phone, the boy does a long stretch while his partner questions what he usually does for fun in his day-to-day life. Walking side by side over the rocks of the isolated coast, she tries to be more specific and asks if he has any kind of hobby besides hunting monsters. With a distant and reflective look, the protagonist confesses that he never stopped to think about it, because since he was created, his only occupation has always been fighting. An old and painful memory surfaces, showing the young man in the midst of a violent battle inside a burning laboratory to protect his beloved professor. In this quick flashback, the boy delivers a crushing punch against a colossal beast, fighting with all his might to prevent the enemy from advancing. Returning to the grim present, he explains that after the destruction of humanity, he spent all his time wandering alone through the desert in search of survivors. Observing the vast landscape from the coastal hill, the android finishes his sentence by stating that this was his grueling routine, until the day he finally found Sina. Moved by the extreme loneliness the boy faced for so long, the girl adjusts her wind-blown hair and laments how difficult it must have been to live that way. Staring at the vastness of the clear sky, the boy agrees with her statement, but implies that things have finally changed for the better. Turning his face with a very sincere smile, he declares he's genuinely happy now, simply because the human is there keeping him company. The purity of those words hits the student hard, making her face blush violently in embarrassment. Completely breaking the cute mood, the boy runs ahead excitedly and calls for his partner to hurry back to the base. Walking right behind him, the young woman lets out a soft sigh, amused at how her partner can be so direct without realizing the romantic impact of his own words. The duo then continues their journey back in silence, climbing the rocky slope with the wind constantly blowing against their school clothes. Now inside the makeshift camp, the protagonist throws the disgusting carcass of a giant alien insect onto the metal floor with a dull thud. The effort of the walk and the adventure finally take their toll, making the girl's stomach rumble loudly, revealing she's starving again. Hearing the unmistakable noise echo through the room, the young man turns his head in surprise and innocently asks if his companion wants something to eat. Annoyed by the embarrassing situation, the student points a finger, yelling that it's all his fault she's hungry, because he got addicted to the little game and delayed their return. Feeling guilty for his own carelessness, the android looks away with a sweat drop on his face, calmly admitting that the human is absolutely right in her complaint. Pounding his fist into his palm to show he's on it, he takes responsibility and announces he'll prepare the meal immediately to make up for his mistake. A dark image of those disgusting alien recipes flashes in the young woman's mind, making her turn pale with horror and immediately refuse the offer of that feast. Desperate to avoid the worst-case culinary scenario, she raises her hand, asking him to stop what he was doing, which gets the attention of the boy, who was already holding a huge insect leg. Hesitating for a brief second with a finger on her chin, the girl tries to formulate a brave proposal that will save her stomach from that space junk. With her eyes shining with sudden determination, she places a hand on her chest and announces loud and clear that she would be taking over the kitchen this time to cook for both of them. Taking charge of the situation, the human fills with pride while her companion just watches her carry that piece of dead creature on her back towards the kitchen. Reflecting to herself, the student deduces that if she applies common culinary techniques from her era, even that bizarre alien meat might taste edible. Observing the monstrous carcass hanging over his shoulder, the girl mentally murmurs that she would love to have normal Earth ingredients available, so she wouldn't have to take so many health risks. In a moment of quick hope, she turns her head and questions her companion if by some miracle he had anything other than those exotic meats in stock. Maintaining his usual calm and unshackable demeanor, the protagonist simply replies that he does have other types of food, surprising his partner. A gigantic wave of relief washes over the human, who bows her head, thanking the heavens for not having to improvise a dish with radioactive entrails. Excited by the wonderful revelation, she raises her head, immediately suggesting they should go to the commercial settlement to buy these normal supplies as soon as possible. Walking over old, rusty train tracks, the boy confirms the existence of a trading post but seriously warns that it's a city inhabited exclusively by artificial androids. Keeping a steady pace, the android explains that he knows a specific resident of that place who grows fresh vegetables and fruits, just as a daily hobby. The mere mention of real food makes the girl's eyes sparkle with pure joy, imagining she could finally taste something healthy and escape the grotesque recipes of this apocalypse. Carrying the piece of monster on his back for the trade, the boy agrees with her excitement, pointing out that shopping together gives off the cozy feeling of a true friendship. Displaying a radiant ear-to-ear smile, the protagonist confesses with total innocence that he's always wanted to experience the mundane act of going to the market with a close friend. The absurd frankness of the declaration makes the student blush, and she grumbles in embarrassment about how her partner can say such needy things with such a pure expression of happiness. Soon after the long walk, the enormous android city appears majestically on the horizon, revealing a colossal metal tower full of windows, erected in the middle of the inhospitable and dusty land. Staring at the impressive magnitude of the cylindrical structure, the young woman lifts her head, completely amazed by the engineering of this gigantic futuristic refuge. Assuming an alert posture, the boy instructs his partner to maintain a perfect disguise and act coldly like any other machine to avoid revealing her human identity to the dangerous residents. With a drop of evident tension on her face, the human hesitantly questions if the disguise is really necessary, even while walking right next to his infallible protection. Closing his eyes with an ironic smile of acceptance, he justifies the bizarre request by stating that his reputation among his own kind is that of a total lone weirdo. Putting the pieces of that revelation together, the girl makes a hilarious face of boredom, instantly understanding that this eccentric personality was the obvious reason he had no friends. Elegantly ignoring his partner's brutal deduction, the young man suggests they enter the city at once to finish their shopping as quickly as possible and avoid bigger problems. Feeling the weight of her own mean joke, the student quickly apologizes and lightly pats his armored arm, assuring him with a smile that she was still his loyal friend, despite his flaws. The duo's light-hearted walk is brought to a very abrupt halt when the boy's heavy footsteps suddenly freeze on the dirt road near the entrance. With no time to stop herself, the young woman ends up bumping into her companion's unmoving back and complains about the jolt. Startled, while the android fixes his gaze on something blocking the path ahead. The android's expression turns alert as he senses something strange in the late afternoon air. A holographic radar-like interface appears in his field of vision, scanning the surroundings for anomalies. Far away, a blue truck speeds desperately across the desert while being bombarded by flying alien insects. Analyzing the distant threat, the protagonist tells his partner that a vehicle is being hunted and that he needs to intervene. Without waiting for a response, the young man dashes off, kicking up dust, and orders the girl to wait right where she is. At an absurd speed, he cuts across the arid landscape, running towards the chaos. Inside the fleeing vehicle, a pink-haired girl fires frantically out the window with a rifle at the swarm. The bald driver tensely comments on running into such a huge horde, while the shooter grumbles about the difficulty of hitting the targets. Focused on the bumpy road, the man advises that staying calm is the best tactic in these dangerous times. This tip sends his partner over the edge, who yells indignantly about it being totally impossible to relax in the middle of a firefight like that. To make matters worse, a tire hits a rock, and the vehicle makes a dangerous jump into the air. Knowing the fatal error, the bald man dryly states that things have gotten very ugly. The tires skid violently on the loose sand, kicking up a curtain of dirt. The truck ends up crashing into the rubble and comes to a complete stop, quickly surrounded by the swarm of monsters. Facing their imminent end, the pink-haired girl scoffs at her partner's stay calm tactic, who just accepts that these lethal mishaps happen. The shooter cocks her weapon again, trying to hold on to a small spark of hope that they could still get out of that scrap heap alive. Suddenly, a loud bang from outside catches her attention. Like a speeding blur, Rihito crosses the side of the broken-down truck, ready for combat. With his usual cold gaze, the boy faces the flying horde and openly declares that he's going to turn them all into experience points. In a brutal impulse, the protagonist launches himself into the air, right into the middle of the beasts, without showing any hesitation. One of the grotesque insects readies its sharp claws to attempt a direct attack on the intruder. With clean and extremely precise strikes, the android dismembers the aliens in mid-air before they can even react. The carnage continues as he falls, destroying several armored creatures in sequence with impressive fluidity. The boy lands softly on the hard ground after obliterating the swarm with his bare hands. Only pieces of monstrous carcasses remain scattered around the flawless savior. Completely impressed, the survivors in the truck praise his raw power and deduce from his eccentric appearance that he can only be the famous alien hunter. The pink-haired girl watches the boy finish the job, recognizing the face of the vigilant who acts on his own. Finishing the quick cleanup, the young man crushes one last writhing insect under the sole of his boot. Checking the system's holographic display, he sighs in disappointment upon realizing that the stat gain is just mediocre without the human's presence. Soon, the rescue duo approaches to thank him for his help, praising the lone hero's absurd level of combat power. Scornful of their awe, the protagonist dryly replies that he still has a long way to go in his evolution. As he turns to leave the area, the travelers offer him a ride to the nearest city, but the kindness is promptly refused. The android justifies his haste by stating that his own pace is faster, and that he has someone important waiting for his return. In the blink of an eye, he powers up his legs and disappears over the horizon like a bolt of lightning. The bald man shrugs at the sudden disappearance, assuming they'll probably run into him inside the commercial base anyway. Far from there, the student waits, sitting on the enormous carcass of the previously defeated monster, completely bored by the delay. A strong gust of wind announces her companion's abrupt landing on the sand. He announces his return and kindly asks if everything went well, receiving a calm confirmation from the young woman. Curious about the distant commotion, she checks if he suffered any serious injuries, but the boy assures her that that level of threat was nothing. With a gentle smile, the boy suggests they head into the city, as he's very eager to taste the dish she promised to cook. That simple, unpretentious comment makes the human's face heat up and blush with embarrassment instantly. Not long after, the duo finally arrives before the immense metal gates of the artificial fortress. Carrying the giant insect leg on his shoulder, the boy's entry is blocked by the uniformed border guards. The officer recognizes the eccentric hunter who lives isolated in the desert and gruffly demands to know the reason for his visit. Maintaining his composure, the young man says he just came to buy basic supplies and argues there shouldn't be a problem since he has money to pay. Casting a sharp, intimidating glare at the officers, the protagonist ironically asks if the gatekeepers happen to choose who enters the base based solely on their mood for the day. Feeling the crushing pressure of that provocation, the guard takes a slight step back, sweating, and just gruffly tells him not to cause any trouble inside. The heavy gate is finally opened, and the boy casually signals for the human to follow him. As soon as they cross the thick containment barrier, the student lets out an exclamation of amazed surprise. A gigantic green light portal scans them from top to bottom during their safe passage inside. The girl's enchantment reaches its peak when the full urban view opens up before her. The enormous fortress reveals bustling stone streets, filled with android inhabitants walking among pleasantly styled and peaceful buildings. Radiating pure excitement, she jumps for joy, celebrating the fact that they're in a real, bustling city. Observing her genuine enthusiasm, the boy asks with slight confusion what exactly she was expecting to find there. Gesturing expressively, the young woman confesses that she was expecting to encounter a completely post-apocalyptic, crumbling environment. Thinking purely logically, the android points out that living in ruins would be very inconvenient for everyone, and the girl quickly agrees with his reasoning. The surrounding buildings display a clean and well-maintained architecture, bathed in sunlight. However, the doe's presence walking down the main avenue begins to generate several murmurs among the pedestrians on the sidewalks. Behind their backs, the residents actively gossip about the hunter, criticizing his useless insistence on fighting outside the walls and expressing fear that his actions will attract enemy swarms to the refuge. The malicious chatter doesn't go unnoticed, and the student hears everything in silence as she follows her partner, who continues to carry the monster meat. The venomous gossip goes further, judging the human for walking with him, and stating with contempt that they hoped both would leave soon. Extremely uncomfortable with the hostile environment, the girl sighs and comments on how unpleasant the residents' reception is. Unfazed by the mass rejection, the boy reminds her that he had already warned her about being seen as a complete eccentric freak by the society. The student narrows her eyes resentfully, internally lamenting that he hid the fact that the level of animosity was so absurd. Full of compassion, she approaches and asks if he's really not hurt by this cruel treatment, but receives a positive and carefree response. With a serene smile, he assures her that just having her there by his side makes the malicious opinions of those people completely unimportant. This new demonstration of affection brings another strong blush to the young woman's face, who still finds it very difficult to ignore the gratuitous cruelty of others. Converting her indignation into motivation, the human raises her small fists and promises to prepare a fantastic meal to cheer him up. This heroic and reflective pause leaves the girl standing in the middle of the street, forcing her to run after her companion, who was already walking ahead. Following through the commercial center, the duo finally reaches the colorful wooden stalls of the local market. The young woman's eyes shine with pure admiration and relief upon seeing with her own eyes that there really are fresh vegetables being sold in the apocalypse. In ecstasy, she turns and begs her partner to buy all those wonderful things at once. Taking the exaggeration into account, the boy gently denies the absurd idea of taking everything but offers to help her carefully select the best ingredients. After a meticulous selection, the vendor anicap puts the potatoes and fresh fruits in a bag for them. To cap off the service, the vendor announces the price, charging the astronomical sum of 10,000 yen for the basic groceries. Saina is startled by the high price charged for the ingredients and questions if it isn't a bit too expensive, shocked by the absurd cost of the groceries. The vendor justifies the price by stating that with aliens loose in the world, harvesting has become a very difficult and dangerous job. Despite understanding the logic, the girl still thinks the price is a ripoff and calls for her companion to handle the situation. Holding a few gold coins in his hands, the boy coldly states that the money he has isn't enough to pay the debt. Without hesitation and demonstrating quick thinking, the protagonist offers the immense monster carcass he was carrying as a trade for the vegetables. Evaluating the unusual proposal, the vendor accepts the deal without batting an eye, aiming for a profit on the fresh beast meat. The young man, however, demands in a threatening tone that the merchant give something of good quality as change, leaving the man visibly sweating under the intimidating pressure. Completely frightened by the presence of the famous hunter, the vendor hands over a bag full of extra vegetables, while hastily agreeing to the demand to avoid conflict. The duo then walks away from the market stall, calmly strolling along the illuminated sidewalks of the artificial city. Carrying the heavy groceries, the student points out indignantly that the deal was clearly unfair and that the vendor was blatantly taking advantage of him. With his usual unshakable calm, the android simply agrees that it was probably true. Not accepting his lack of action, she demands to know why he didn't complain about the exploitation at the time. He calmly explains that complaining wouldn't have helped, and that the situation would have gotten much worse if those guards found out about a human being there. He then changes the subject, suggesting they head back to the base, as he can't wait to taste her cooking. Letting out a long sigh of resignation, the young woman accepts his well-founded excuse and promises to prepare a dish worthy of the absurd price they just paid. At that exact moment, a loud voice echoes down the main avenue, calling for the alien hunter and attracting the attention of the two. They come face to face with the pink-haired girl and the bald driver they had rescued earlier in the desert. Waving very friendly in the middle of the street, maintaining his defensive posture and suspicious gaze towards strangers, The protagonist gruffly asks what the duo wants with him. With a wide smile and her hands raised in a gesture of peace, the pink-haired girl asks the hero not to be so defensive, assuring him they only came to thank him properly for his help. The android immediately refuses the gratitude, stating there's no need for rewards. However, the bald man insists, handing him a small yellow box and begging him to just accept the gift graciously. The driver justifies his action by claiming that repaying favors is their absolute rule, and threatens to follow him all over the city until he accepts the package. Worn down by the extremely annoying insistence, the young man sighs and takes the box. Satisfied with the completed delivery, the travelers say goodbye, announcing they'll be in the city for a while. They make it clear that the hero can look for them if he needs any special supplies in the future and depart. Waving. Observing the mysterious box in his hands, the boy wonders what just happened. The student comments that she found the duo quite friendly and asks with great curiosity what he got. The package reveals a valuable box of curry cubes, making the human jump for joy at the incredible opportunity to prepare that nostalgic dish. Staring at the peculiar ingredient with doubt, the protagonist confesses he's never eaten curry in his life and asks if it really tastes good. Full of confidence, the young woman guarantees that this recipe never disappoints and is incredibly delicious. The boy gets excited and demands she cook exactly that for dinner, a plan the human immediately accepts with a smile. The orange sunset already dominates the melancholic sky when the duo finally returns to the ruins of the hunter's isolated base in the middle of the desert. Upon opening the camp door, they are met with enormous piles of accumulated trash bags and dozens of filthy pans scattered in the corners of the room. An aura of demonic fury envelops the student's entire body as she screams, demanding to know the meaning of this disgusting mess. Cornered and sweating, the android stammers that he's been very busy and almost never home lately. Not accepting any excuses, she hysterically points to the overflowing sink and yells that leaving dirty dishes and accumulated trash like that is unacceptable for any civilized person. Trying to appease the furious beast, he nonchalantly raises his hand, swearing on everything that he was planning to clean that pigsty later. The flimsy excuse only infuriates the girl further, who points a finger in her companion's face, openly accusing him of being a chronic procrastinator. She warns that it's impossible to clean a dump like this, and orders him to clean the utensils as soon as he's done using them. Completely scared by his partner's monumental lecture, the young man backs away, raising both hands in a sign of absolute surrender, and quickly agreeing to the dictatorial order. Satisfied with the boy's blind obedience, the young woman firmly ties a bandana around her head and declares that the great base cleanup will begin at that very moment. The pair of companions put on white aprons and begin to wash the enormous pile of accumulated dishes in the kitchen sink, working in perfect sync. Soon after, the hard work continues with the two of them carrying countless black trash bags out of the military facility. While the android collects the rest of the packaging from the floor, the human vigorously mops the metal floor of the long, dark corridor. Wiping the sweat from her exhausted face, the girl announces with relief that the kitchen is finally spotless. She observes the shining countertop and ironically remarks, completely surprised, that the table was actually a very light color hidden under the heavy grime. The protagonist breaks the cheerful mood by gently pointing to a small, bleeding cut on the tip of her finger. Observing the cut with some delay, the young woman agrees in surprise and wonders where she managed to get hurt during the cleanup. Worried about the human's fragile health, the boy takes her hand with extreme firmness, announcing he will treat the wound immediately. The girl shrinks back, asking him to wait, totally startled by his swift action. To perform the proper procedure, the young man quickly fetches his first aid kit, equipped with small tools and medical supplies. Finishing securing the bandage with a small piece of tape, he notices his partner's expression and innocently asks why her face is suddenly so red. Completely embarrassed by the boy's unusual proximity, the student turns her face away, stammering that it's absolutely nothing. She gently pushes him aside, ordering him to wait over there while she prepares dinner alone. The girl leans heavily against the newly closed kitchen door, letting out a long, breathless sigh to try and calm her racing heart. Covering her face, consumed by intense embarrassment, the young woman's mind screams about how absurdly handsome her companion is up close and demands that he start respecting her personal space once and for all. To banish the unwanted romantic thoughts, the human gives her own warm cheeks a couple of pats and mentally decrees that her absolute focus now must be solely on preparing a perfect meal. The real magic in the kitchen begins with the meats and ingredients being sliced with extreme precision and sauteed in a hot pan, which soon fills the room with a delicious and unmistakable aroma. Stirring the bubbling broth on the stove, the young woman tastes the dish, confirming the perfect quality of her traditional seasoning. She silently celebrates finding emergency rice hidden in the previous mess, as eating curry without rice would be a tremendous waste of that fantastic flavor. Full of pride in her own culinary masterpiece, the student appears at the entrance of the room holding 2 steaming plates with a radiant smile and announces loudly that the meal is finally ready. The protagonist's eyes shine intensely, filled with stars, as he witnesses the beautiful presentation and irresistible aroma of that exotic human dish served before him. Already seated at the dinner table, he praises the extremely appetizing appearance of the food, stating he had been looking forward to this moment, with a confident pose. The girl tells him to prepare to be hit by a true explosion of flavor. Joining their hands in the classic traditional gesture of thanks for meals, the two begin to say the phrase in unison, about to take the first, long-awaited bite of dinner. However, a mysterious flash of blue light cuts through the android's bionic vision, and his eyes widen in astonishment as he perceives the sudden anomaly forming in the room. The merciless magical glow completely swallows the human before she can touch her silverware, and the girl lets out a confused murmur, as she's violently pulled by the temporal flux straight through the facility's ceiling. The dizzying teleportation ends abruptly, leaving the student sprawled on her own bed in the past, consumed by a prolonged, silent shock. Observing the contours of her dark room, bathed only by the light of a street lamp, the young woman states with a clear tone of sadness that she was really sent back to her normal time. Collapsing backward onto the soft mattress in an act of pure frustration, she flails her arms, bitterly complaining that she didn't even get a fair chance to taste her own food after all that cleaning work. Raising her hand towards the ceiling, the young woman stares intently at the small white bandage on her finger and melancholically deduces that this physical wound proves that none of it was just a delusion of her mind. With her brain working a mile a minute, the girl harshly blames herself for not gathering almost any useful information during her trip to the market and desperately wonders how she could prevent that chaotic future from becoming a reality. A frightening and logical thought hits her line of reasoning like a punch, making the student's eyes widen in terror as she connects the dangerous pieces of this complex temporal paradox. Her mind is invaded by the image of her partner frozen before the food on the lonely table in the future, raising the cruel question of what would happen to Rihito's very existence if she changed the past and prevented the war. The narrative abandons the young woman's dilemma and cuts abruptly to a gigantic alien obelisk glowing menacingly in shades of neon purple under the dark sky of the ruined future. In the dark and oppressive interior of this colossal fortress, a large sphere of pure blue energy illuminates the center of a circular hall, filled with immense floating pillars. From the densest shadows of the main corridor, the unmistakable silhouette of that same hooded, horned alien who had humiliated the hunter emerges, walking with rhythmic, slow steps. A red-skinned female alien with multiple glowing eyes greets the newcomer with clear mockery, calling him by the name Vlay and openly criticizing his absurd tardiness for the meeting of the invasion's top executives. Another monster present, sporting a bizarre giant old head, judges his companion's posture, stating that this lack of punctuality is definitive proof that he lacks the decency required to hold such a prestigious position in their hierarchy. Floating silently through the dark chamber, a translucent creature resembling a space jellyfish points out in an ethereal tone that failing to adhere to established schedules is an unacceptable attitude. Splendidly ignoring the cross, criticism and judgment of his disgusting colleagues, the horned monster just lets out a grunt of pure disdain and crosses his strong arms. From the center of the misty room, the enigmatic hooded figure officially declares the start of the urgent meeting and, in a tone of absolute superiority, orders all subordinates to pay immediate attention to the summoned hologram. The central magic sphere obeys its master and projects a beautiful three-dimensional map of the solar system floating in the air, casting a faint, spectral blue light on the curious faces of the space freaks present. The mysterious leader analyzes the strange cosmic distortion displayed on the holographic map and informs the group that there is a severe anomaly in the alignment of the stars occurring repeatedly in that sector, a serious fact that demands a thorough investigation with maximum priority. With a harsh and imperative gesture tearing through the air, the hooded creature decrees that all elite commanders gathered there must march immediately to Earth and annihilate the source of the problem, without fail. An order that is met with a thundering unison of blind loyalty. Far from the impending alien retaliation and back on the terrestrial battlefield, the devastated city where the protagonist usually wanders displays the lonely ruins of an old, destroyed shopping mall. Illuminated by the strong afternoon sun, routine chaos returns to the dead land the instant immense blue electric tentacles shatter the last intact glass windows of the building, tearing through the concrete to destroy any target in their path. Inside the stuffy, wrecked location, the boy blocks a heavy charge from the colossal beast, using only the raw strength of his bandaged arms and coldly scoffs that the enemy's attack is completely useless against him. Staring with deadly focus at the bizarre spherical creature made of sharp fangs and whipping tentacles, the lonely android hunter maintains his dangerous offensive posture, just waiting for the perfect opening to finish another mission. Extremely attentive to the danger on the sides of the confrontation, His human partner who had returned warns in a desperate tone about a sneaky whip coming straight for the boy's back. But the young man reassures his friend, calmly stating that he had already noticed the ambush attempt, quickly accumulating an absurd amount of latent blue energy around his entire cybernetic body. The android lets out a fierce cry into the dusty air and prepares his feared and devastating close-range counterattack. The brutal electric pulse fired by the hero hits the mass of the alien octopus head on like a blind thunderclap, making the monstrous beast contort violently in the air and let out silent screams as it absorbs the extreme damage generated by that infallible destructive ability. With a sharp and focused gaze, the protagonist concentrates a strong destructive energy in the palm of his raised hand. In a swift motion, he delivers a lightning, fast downward strike, coldly announcing that this creature would become just his experience. The impact of the attack generates a colossal explosion of blue power that shatters the tentacles and sends debris flying everywhere. Right after obliterating the enemy, the android lands calmly on the rocky ground, letting out a sigh of relief. He announces that the fight is over and calls for Sina, assuring her it's now safe to come out of hiding, and the girl readily agrees. Making her way through the rubble to the octopus's carcass, the young woman mutters to herself, realizing she's still in the future, and that today would be Saturday. Observing the monstrous beast up close, the student comments, unsettled by the creature's bizarre appearance, but the boy quickly interrupts her, stating that its tentacles are quite delicious. The culinary revelation leaves the human indignant, questioning if he really took her to that dangerous place just to hunt for food, and receives confirmation that he only wanted to offer her something tasty. In an attempt to change the subject, the young man calmly asks if there's anything else she would like to do there, asking her to be understanding as the girl begins to ponder her options. Suddenly, an imaginary light bulb appears above the young woman's head, and she lets out a small cry of excitement upon having a great idea. Changing her posture, she animatedly declares that she would very much like to find out more information about the past of this destroyed world. The boy repeats the word, past, reflectively as he observes the vast landscape of gray ruins under the sun and agrees with the proposal. With a serious expression, the student elaborates that she needs to understand how the invasion began, the impact of the meteor, and the details about Ryuto's own creation to better comprehend this reality. Very enthusiastically, she grabs her partner's arm, demanding specific data like the government's actions at the time and historical records. But the boy reminds her that he had already explained the basics before. With an awkward smile, the android puts a hand on his head and confesses that he can't help much with this search, as all his knowledge of that era is limited to what his professor taught him. Full of hope, the young woman points a finger and questions if there might be some files stored at his base. But the boy dashes her expectations, saying there's very little information left there. Faced with that negative response, the girl lowers her head, letting out a disappointed sigh like someone who just lost their only clue. The protagonist looks down thoughtfully for a brief moment, until a memory hits him, and he murmurs that there might be an alternative. With a calm posture, the android informs her that he probably knows a specific place capable of granting her wish for knowledge. Completely euphoric, the student moves forward and grabs her companion's clothes tightly, asking with shining eyes if he was serious. The abrupt movement catches the boy by surprise, making him recoil a bit as he confirms her statement, stuttering slightly. He then explains the existence of a huge data center known as the Central Information Library, which stores old records. Without wasting a single second, the human is already running ahead, claiming that since their time is short, they need to get there immediately, forcing her partner to ask her to wait. During the short run, the young woman insists she can't waste time standing around while the boy gestures, trying to curb her absurd haste. Finally stopping, she looks back and listens to the young man explain that the library is very far away, and they wouldn't make it if they set off so recklessly, making her question the exact distance. With a hand on his chin, the android projects a mental map and calculates that the destination is about 100 kilometers away, leaving the girl disheartened to realize the journey would take an eternity on foot. Very determined, she clenches her fists and argues that if they keep moving forward without giving up, they'll eventually reach the place. With a slightly more serious look, the boy warns that the long distance would be the least of their problems, and she apprehensively realizes that the situation holds more dangers. He points to a destroyed staircase and suggests they go up to the building's roof to show her the reality, and the human just repeats the order, somewhat confused. The duo walks through the dark corridors until they stop in front of an old green metal door at the end of the path. With a firm push, the hunter opens the heavy door, giving access to the external rooftop area. An extremely strong gust of wind hits them the moment they step out, making the student shield her face with her arm and complain about the wind. Near the edge of the building, the boy points a finger at the sky, and his partner approaches, questioning the reason for this demonstration. While holding her hair, tousled by the wind, The girl agrees to observe the landscape while the boy maintains a very serious expression. The view from up high reveals the vastness of the ruined metropolis stretching to the horizon under the sunny sky. After scanning the area with her eyes, the young woman turns her face in confusion, claiming to see absolutely nothing abnormal, but the android instructs her to keep looking carefully. A few seconds later, the girl's expression changes drastically, and she lets out a sound of pure astonishment upon finally noticing the anomaly. Far in the distance, floating silently above the destroyed buildings, was a strange alien silhouette hovering in the air. Faced with the colossal, cocoon-shaped creature, the human stammers in terror, asking what that was, and the protagonist coldly replies that it's a Leviathan-class monster. Overcome by dread, the student murmurs that the situation looks terrible, and soon apprehensively deduces the true meaning of that obstacle being there. Without beating around the bush, the boy confirms the worst-case scenario, revealing that the library is located exactly under that flying aberration's territory, making the girl grumble that this must be some kind of sick joke. To worsen her despair, her companion points his finger and warns that even if they manage to avoid the giant monster, they would still have to deal with another major problem on the way. The young man describes that the route requires crossing a mineral cave infested with human, devouring aliens, causing the student to drop to her knees, whimpering that the mission is impossible. In a quick burst of hope, she looks up with a smile and theorizes that if they had a fast vehicle, they could survive the journey. But the illusion dies instantly when the boy denies having any transportation. Completely frustrated by the lack of resources, the human yells in annoyance that the trip is then truly useless, leaving her partner somewhat startled by the burst of anger. Under the threatening shadow of the floating monster, the girl raises her hands in despair, questioning what the solution to this gigantic impasse could be. Away from the rooftop edge, the young woman walks with her head down, letting out a heavy sigh at needing transportation just to visit a simple library. During their descent, the boy explains that the vast majority of civilian and military vehicles were annihilated in the first wave of the alien invasion, while his partner asks if absolutely nothing was left intact. The surrounding cityscape corroborates his story, displaying only rusty carcasses of tanks and cars crushed by the power of the beasts. In an attempt to work around the problem, the student flashes a cheerful smile and suggests that if the cars are just broken, they could simply fix one of them. Standing amidst the scrap heaps, she directly asks if the hunter could perform this repair, but the boy retorts in confusion, saying he doesn't know how to do that. Very calmly, the protagonist points out an obvious fact, reminding his partner that he is an android manufactured exclusively for combat. With an extremely serious and robotic expression, he declares he has no vehicle mechanic functions installed in his system. The honest and dry response hits the girl hard, making her let out a groan of pure bewilderment at this technical limitation. Very proud of his own incompetence, the young man beats his chest, guaranteeing that even if they had all the new parts, he would still be incapable of fixing the engine, causing an indignant scream from the human. Sometime later, the duo returns to the comfort of the base's room, where the student throws herself on the couch, deep in thought, while her partner remains standing. With her chin resting on her hands, she murmurs, reflecting on the lack of a solid plan and wonders if the best option wouldn't be to just keep searching the desert for something that works. Suddenly, the android gives a small jolt, remembering a crucial detail and mentioning the existence of a duo of travelers who were in a truck. The girl repeats the information and soon connects the dots, realizing that because they saved those two's lives earlier, they now had a debt of gratitude to collect. Excited by the possibility of using the favor to her advantage, the young woman suggests they use this argument to convince the travelers to give them a safe ride in their truck. The android closes his eyes with a clear expression of disgust, remembering the scandalous encounter he had with the pair of travelers on the city street. Noticing the drastic change in her companion's mood, the student asks with concern if there's something wrong with her idea. In an attempt to hide his irritation, the boy denies the discomfort and decides they should head to the commercial city immediately, as the two might still be there. The young woman just observes the boy's strange reaction in silence, trusting her intuition that he was hiding something. Standing at the base's exit, the protagonist calls for his partner, asking if she's not coming with him, and the girl quickly gets up, confirming their departure. The walk back through the arid ruins takes place in a tense atmosphere, with the hunter remaining in a deep and reflective silence. Bothered by the lack of conversation, the student breaks the ice, questioning why he seems to dislike that rescued duo so much. Without slowing his pace, the boy reveals that those people are known as scavengers, making the human repeat the word, not understanding its exact meaning. To clarify the situation, he explains that scavengers are groups of opportunists who search the dead ruins to unearth ancient human artifacts and sell them for profit. Under the scorching desert sun, the young woman asks what the big deal is, and the boy replies that his issue isn't personal dislike, but a matter of safety. Abruptly stopping, he points a finger and warns that these scavengers are crazy people who willingly enter extremely lethal ruins, and advises that if she gets involved with their kind, she could end up risking her life. With a comical and annoyed expression, the young man insists he's not in a bad mood, but the girl immediately retorts that his dissatisfaction is written all over his face. Blushing with embarrassment at being found out, the android again denies his irritation while the human just smiles ironically, accepting his flimsy excuse. Not missing the opportunity, the student slyly approaches and points a finger in her companion's face, accusing him of being just as weird as the scavengers. The provocation hits the protagonist's weak spot, and he recoils indignantly, assuring her he's a perfectly normal person. But the girl gets the last word, yelling that he is indeed very strange. The accusation hits the android like a physical blow, making him freeze completely in the middle of the street as an aura of depression envelops his body. Leaning back in a dramatic pose, the boy just repeats the word weirdo several times with a drawn-out tone of pure suffering. Soon, he collapses to his knees on the ground, slapping his hands on the dirt while the young woman tries to console him, asking him not to be so down over a simple comment. Gesturing with her hand, the human argues that he spends his days hunting aliens on his own, an attitude no other android in that world has. With an understanding look, she concludes that this lonely and dangerous routine is indeed a very weird attitude, and the boy melancholically agrees with her logic. With a gentle smile, the girl states that they are both weirdos in this situation, so he didn't need to worry so much about others' labels. Suddenly, the hunter's expression changes to pure terror, and he screams desperately for his companion to get down, advancing at a frightening speed. In an immediate reflex, the protagonist grabs the student in his arms and leaps away, narrowly escaping the sharp claws of a winged monster that dove from the sky. The beast's swooping attack fails miserably, kicking up dust and destroying part of the rubble, while the young man lands safely with the girl. Staring at the enormous blue crystalline bird, the android recognizes the species as an arev and confusedly questions what that monster was doing there. With an analytical gaze, the boy reflects that this specific creature should only inhabit the frigid regions much farther north on the continent. The gigantic beast lets out a shrill and deafening screech that echoes through the ruined buildings as it threateningly flaps its large wings. Faced with the monster's atypical behavior, the protagonist narrows his eyes, deducing that the creature's presence here couldn't be a mere coincidence. The face of the fearsome alien commander flashes in the boy's mind, raising the dark suspicion that this could be the work of an enemy executive, but he quickly shakes his head, deciding to focus only on the current battle. Without losing his calm, the young man orders Sina to stay hidden in a safe place, and the girl promptly agrees as he advances with firm steps towards the confrontation. With a focused and implacable gaze, the protagonist accumulates a dense destructive energy in his right hand, firmly declaring that he wouldn't let the beast lay a single finger on Sina. Completely furious, the immense blue bird dives at high speed, aiming its sharp claws directly at the lone hunter. Preparing his combat stance, the young man concentrates even more power and declares loudly that the winged aberration would become just another experience point for him. The impact is violent, but the android blocks the creature's deadly claws, using only the absurd resistance of his own forearms. The collision of forces generates a strong shockwave that sweeps away the dust and shatters the stone ground around the two combatants. Maintaining his impenetrable defense, the boy sarcastically praises the beast's strength but warns that the monster's decision to attempt a direct attack was a fatal mistake. In an extremely swift move, the young hunter grabs the bird's scaly leg with crushing force, preventing any chance of escape. Without giving the creature time to react, he points the glowing palm of his free hand at close range towards the enemy's gigantic body. The cry of the Destar cannon echoes through the ruins, firing a gigantic beam of blue light that pierces the heavens and instantly obliterates the alien bird. After the complete annihilation of the threat, the protagonist observes the crystalline debris falling gently while letting out a sigh of a job well done. Staring at the blue feathers floating on the breeze, he murmurs with concern about the weirdness of finding an Arev in this region and wonders what is happening in the world. Coming out from her hiding spot behind a rock, the student asks apprehensively if her companion is okay, and he quickly confirms, suggesting they resume their interrupted conversation. The sudden transition from a deadly fight to a casual chat leaves the girl a bit lost, and she makes a sound of confusion, trying to follow his train of thought. Getting back on track, the young woman smiles gently and explains that although he is indeed a bit strange, he has never done anything that could truly hurt her. Making peace signs with her hands, she concludes her thought by stating that even if the scavengers are very weird people, there would be no danger at all as long as she was with him. The human's kind and trusting words leave the android momentarily speechless, and he agrees in a somewhat goofy manner. Excited, the student grabs the hunter's arm, pulling him forward and quickening her pace, arguing that their time to find the scavengers was short. As he's being pulled, the boy observes his own hand, recalling the sensation of having her there, walking beside him, and murmurs the word, "together." Thoughtfully, with his gaze fixed on his own palm, the young man reflects that he understands the situation purely logically, but feels completely lost trying to decipher the warm feeling filling his chest. Further ahead, the girl shouts, calling for her distracted partner and telling him to hurry up, snapping him out of his trance and making him run to catch up. Sometime later, the duo finally crosses the immense gates of the android city and enters the bustling main avenue filled with pedestrians. Walking through the center, the student assumes a closed-off and annoyed expression, maintaining a very threatening silence. Noticing the clear change in his partner's mood, the protagonist calmly and innocently asks if something had upset her. Turning her face away in a huff, the young woman vehemently denies being angry, but the boy points out with his usual sincerity that her bad mood was extremely obvious. In the girl's mind, the mocking voices of the entrance guards echo like an irritating reminder of how they ridiculed the hunter without any shame while he just ignored the insults. Pressing her lips together, the human confesses that witnessing those people treating her friend that way made her very uncomfortable. The boy tries to smooth things over with a calm smile, asking her not to worry because he didn't care, but the young woman immediately retorts, yelling that it was precisely his passivity that bothered her. Exasperated, the girl points a finger, accusing him of being the one to blame for never defending himself against others' insults, making the boy break into a cold sweat and desperately try to change the subject by remembering their mission to find the scavengers. Seizing the opportunity, the student starts running excitedly down the street again, shouting for them to hurry, while her companion sighs in relief that she changed the subject so quickly. The duo then delves into the crowd of the bustling market under the afternoon sun, rushing to try and track down the blue truck. Standing in the middle of the flow of pedestrians, the girl observes the tall buildings around and questions where they should start their search, as the city was surprisingly immense. The android honestly replies that he doesn't know the place very well either, and suggests that the most logical alternative would be to ask the residents for information. As he analyzes the vicinity, he notices the looks of aversion and fear everyone gives him, shrinking back and murmuring melancholically that it wouldn't work. Noticing the general revulsion of the crowd, the human agrees with a sigh that trying to interact peacefully with the residents seemed like an almost impossible task. Determined not to lose optimism, the student raises her fists excitedly and decides that the best strategy is to simply search for their targets by walking all over the base, and the boy accepts the idea right away. From that moment, the duo begins an intense exploration, checking shops, observing bright display windows, and examining every bustling corner of the futuristic metropolis. After a long and tiring walk through the main thoroughfares, they finally pause in the middle of an empty square to catch their breath. With a serious expression, the young man concludes that after so much effort with no results, the scavengers had probably already left the city to explore another dead region. In an attempt to re-evaluate their steps, the hunter turns his head, calling for his partner, and suggests they return to the entrance gate to restart the search systematically. The only response to the boy's call is silence and the wind blowing on the paved street, revealing that the young woman had vanished from his side. Shock is plastered on the protagonist's face as he freezes in place and murmurs, completely terrified at the possibility of them having gotten separated in the middle of that urban confusion. Panic takes over the boy's actions, and he breaks into a desperate run through the city's corridors, shouting Sina's name at the top of his lungs. Far away, the girl displays an expression laden with pure desperation and regret. The student states out loud that she's completely lost as she anxiously observes the suspicious inhabitants and dark alleys of a poor area of the refuge. Hiding near some barrels, she mentally scolds herself for letting her curiosity get the better of her and leading her to such a rough ghetto, and is soon startled by the sudden approach of a bizarre mounted on a robotic horse. Trying to stay invisible, the young woman covers her mouth with her hands, breathing quietly and praying not to be noticed by the strange people in the dark alley. Overcome by survival instinct, she leaves her hiding spot and starts running through the narrow streets, repeating to herself that she needs to find her companion as quickly as possible. Her escape plan is brought to an abrupt halt when a heavy metal boot steps firmly right in front of the girl, cutting off her path. The human freezes in her tracks and her eyes widen, feeling a chill down her spine at the mysterious figure blocking the street. Two delinquent androids with sadistic smiles on their faces surround the student, and their leader invites her with a slimy tone to have some fun with them. Cornered against a dirty wall, the student trembles with fear, wondering who these lunatics are and desperately searching for an escape route. Turning her head to avoid eye contact, she refuses the bizarre invitation, stammering that she has an important appointment to attend. Ignoring her refusal, the thug moves forward and grabs the young woman's wrist with extreme aggression, telling her not to be so cold, which elicits a sharp scream of surprise from his victim. As the girl struggles and demands to be let go, the delinquent laughs cruelly at her useless resistance while his accomplice celebrates his boss's feat, claiming that since he's a combat android, fighting against his brute force was completely futile. Pulled closer to the disgusting goons, the girl closes her eyes tightly, quietly begging for help and calling Rito's name in desperation. The answer to the young woman's prayers comes with the sound of fast footsteps, leaping against the high walls of the dark ghetto. In a swift dive, the pink-haired shooter they had rescued earlier delivers a violent flying kick straight to the delinquent leader's face. The crushing blow sends the thug flying, making him collide violently with the cement ground and kicking up a dense cloud of dust and rocks. Still stunned and holding her wrist, the student blinks a few times, processing the rescue, and immediately recognizes the girl from the truck. Striking a stylish superhero pose with a friendly smile, the pink-haired traveler greets the human and asks what such a normal girl was doing alone in such a dangerous area. Her voice trembling, the student takes a few steps back, stammering in front of the criminals. Completely terrified, a colossal, flaming aura appears behind the rescuer, projecting a monstrous and threatening silhouette that instantly frightens the thugs. The human girl desperately warns the pink-haired girl to watch out for the enemy's imminent attack. On the stone ground, the kneeling delinquent grinds his teeth in pure fury while his partner prepares a lethal electric charge. Enveloped in intense yellow lightning, the shooter's partner charges forward and grabs the thug's head, declaring in a brutal tone that he would pay for daring to attack them like that. The burst of electricity detonates violently against the floor, raising a curtain of smoke and making the delinquent scream in agony under the crushing force of the attack. Baring her sharp fangs with a demonic smile, the pink-haired shooter sadistically laughs at the enemy's pain, mocking the deplorable state he was in. Maintaining a grim expression, she squeezes the defeated thug's neck and asks in a chilling tone if he enjoyed the extreme punishment. The pink-haired girl's large companion dryly warns that the girl should get away from there quickly, while the shooter complains that she thought a turtle would be faster than him. Watching from the top of the stairs, the human gasps in surprise as the two travelers throw a spherical bomb into the alley, announcing that the final cleanup was about to begin. The explosive detonates in a deafening flash, spreading fire across the walls and sending the delinquents flying as the duo calmly walks away from the blast. With the mess sorted out, the pink-haired shooter turns to the girl in a friendly manner and asks if they shouldn't leave now, and the student just agrees, murmuring and stammering. Walking through the now empty alley, the human shyly praises the traveler's combat skills, who retorts by promising the thugs wouldn't get away with it in their next encounter. Far from that chaotic ghetto, the narrative cuts to her hunter partner, walking hurriedly through the nervous center of commerce, searching for Sina with a racing heart. In the middle of the dense android crowd, the young man looks around anxiously, quietly repeating the girl's name, trying to spot her somewhere on the avenue. Completely focused on his search, the protagonist ends up bumping violently into a very tall man with dark glasses and quickly apologizes without even looking properly at who he bumped into. Recognizing the young man's exhausted face, the bald giant calls him by his famous title, Alien Hunter, and then, with a sharp look, notes that he is indeed a scavenger. Maintaining a relaxed posture, the man observes the young man's distress and offers help, stating that he seems to be in a complicated mess, while the boy turns his tense face, still focused on his missing partner. Suspicious of a stranger's intentions, the hunter mutters under his breath with an expression of aversion, questioning himself if this grim-faced scavenger deserved a shred of trust. The thought of the real dangers the girl was facing in the dark streets speaks louder, making the young man swallow his pride and reluctantly accept help for her sake. Hearing the short account, the man in glasses exhales a puff of cigarette smoke and seriously agrees that losing one's travel companion in this region was not a good situation at all. Intrigued by the gravity in his tone, the android asks what he meant by that, and the scavenger begins to explain about the factions that inhabited the city's periphery. The bald man describes that there are banished delinquents and savage types living hidden in the sewers, reinforcing that if the human fell into their hands, the rescue would be very complicated. Desperation takes over the boy's face as he yells for them to start the search immediately before it's too late, but a shrill voice interrupts the urgency, calling the scavenger by the name Gran. With an ironic smile, the big man notes that luck has come knocking as the young man quickly turns his neck and freezes upon seeing Sina walking, safe and sound, alongside the pink-haired girl. Embarrassed by her own disappearance, the student gives a sheepish smile, scratching the back of her neck, and offers a timid apology, announcing she was finally back. Relieved by the peaceful outcome of the confusion, the scavenger in glasses smirks and puts out his cigarette in an ashtray, noting that her desperate partner no longer needed his search services. Still in a state of shock, the protagonist's eyes widen as he stares at the human's figure, unable to process the profound relief that instantly flooded his body. Displaying an exaggerated curiosity, the pink-haired traveler points a finger, asking who the lone hunter was who was about to pull his hair out over her disappearance. Overcome by repressed emotions, the boy lowers his face, clenches his fists tightly, and takes a deep breath before taking any drastic action in the middle of the street. In an intense and unexpected show of affection, the android hugs the girl, holding her firmly against his body and murmuring with genuine relief how grateful he is that she's safe. Completely caught off guard by the public intimacy, the young woman blushes violently, gently pushing her partner away while stammering and yelling, questioning what he was doing. The boy quickly steps back from the contact, raising his hands in apology and explaining, stumbling over his words, that the profound relief of finding her alive impulsively took over his actions. Still red with embarrassment, the human covers her face with her hands, grumbling that sudden, affectionate actions like that were a tremendous injustice and a cowardly move on his part. Her partner listens to the scolding in silence, noticing the girl's nervousness, and agrees, calmly stating that as long as she was unharmed, that was the only thing that really mattered right now. Feeling guilty for all the chaos she caused, the student offers a sincere apology for causing so much unnecessary worry, while the boy guarantees with a determined look that he would never take his eyes off her in dangerous places again. Regaining her demanding posture, she points a finger at the hunter's chest, establishing the rule that this type of sudden contact should not be repeated. The young man, accepting the scolding without question, just naturally confirms the agreement. Indignant at his lack of tact, the girl gestures hysterically, explaining that the problem was the unannounced hug, not the need for a prior form, but he tilts his head, finding all this complication irrational. Watching the argument from the sidelines, the bald scavenger sighs, calling the cute little couple irresponsible and cracking an ironic joke about getting a room since their love scene was drawing a lot of attention. The pink-haired girl, laughing openly, reinforces the mockery, suggesting they continue their sappy little scene elsewhere. The commotion then moves to the outdoor area of a charming cafeteria in the city center, illuminated by the afternoon sun shining on the tables and colorful umbrellas. Seated in wicker chairs with cold drinks on the tables, the atmosphere calms down, and the pink-haired shooter cheerfully suggests it's time for the quartet to formally introduce themselves. With a hand on his chin, the scavenger in dark glasses introduces himself as Loop, and then points to his short partner, introducing her as Glans, concluding the introductions by greeting the famous hunter. Maintaining his usual cold formality, the protagonist says his own name and discreetly points to the student, introducing Sina to the group. After the introductions, Loop adopts a business-like tone and gets straight to the point, asking why the duo was looking for them so desperately in the middle of the market. The human swallows hard at the direct question, while the shooter Glans raises her glass with a suggestive smile, teasing the android to reveal the true interest behind their relentless search. The pink-haired shooter laughs sarcastically, asking if the lone hunter had changed his mind so quickly about not wanting their help, while the human just watches the exchange of barbs in silence. With a cold and direct gaze, the young hunter ignores the provocation and gets straight to the point, openly declaring that he needs a ride in their truck to get to the legendary information library. The mention of the dangerous destination makes the scavenger Loop spit out his drink in shock and state that the hunter must be either very brave or very dumb, questioning if he knew exactly what inhabited that abandoned place. Completely shocked by the suicidal audacity, the large bald man comments to his partner that this kid must be a total idiot to want to go there. But the android crosses his arms, assuring them he was aware of all the risks and was still determined. Contradicting the logic of self-preservation, the pink-haired girl starts laughing hysterically, slamming the table, finding the situation hilarious, and deducing without proof that the human accompanying him must be just as crazy as he is. Confused by the scavenger's exaggerated reaction, the student whispers close to her companion's shoulder, asking what was going on, and if they would agree to help or not. The memory of the monstrous silhouette flying over the dark library haunts the protagonist's mind, and he silently wonders why on Earth these treasure hunters would help them enter the lair of a powerful alien like the Leviathan. The answer comes with the shooter Glans raising her arms, loudly celebrating that their motivation would be purely and simply financial profit, startling the young human with her sudden capitalist excitement. Noticing her blunder of shouting about money, the traveler gestures hastily, apologizing for her over-the-top emotion and tries to regain her composure while the duo of adventurers just stares at her, dumbfounded. Not understanding the financial logic, the girl shakes her head, questioning how they could profit from a ruined library full of hungry monsters. The comment hits the shooter's mercantile soul, and she points a finger to the sky, displaying a gigantic smile and celebrating that she was praying for someone to ask that exact question. In a dramatic monologue, Glans epically describes that rumors say the library holds priceless artifacts from the ancient world and treasures of the extinct humanity that are worth a true fortune in the hands of collectors. Cutting his partner's heroic spile short, Loop finishes the explanation very dryly, declaring that the place was practically the promised land for audacious scavengers. Annoyed by the interruption, the girl slams her hands on the table, demanding her partner stop ruining her narrative, while the man in glasses exhales smoke, laughing at her complete lack of emotional control. Tired of the endless jokes and focused only on the mission, the android clenches his fists, slams the table, and yells in an authoritarian tone, asking if they were going to give them the darn ride in the truck or not, immediately silencing the laughter. Faced with the intimidating pressure, the pink-haired traveler yields with a wide smile, confirming in a cheerful tone that they would have no problem taking the duo to their destination. Extremely happy and relieved, the girl turns to her companion, grabbing his shoulders and celebrating the success of the negotiation, while he agrees with a contained, slight smile. However, the excitement is soon interrupted when the shooter points a finger, raising a caveat that makes the two of them recoil with worried expressions. Assuming a posture of someone who sets the rules, the pink-haired girl crosses her arms and coldly decrees that the trip wouldn't be free, establishing the harsh reality of the scavenger world. Staring at the traveler with a suspicious look, the hunter murmurs to his partner about his intuition that this wouldn't be easy and demands to know the exact condition the duo wanted to impose. Loop advises the hunter not to give them that murderous look, stating that the terms were simple, while his companion pointed out that, for the great hero of the desert, it would be just a routine job. Already out of patience with the excessive mystery, the young man's face hardens, and he gives a direct, harsh order, demanding they spit out what the darn price of the deal was. Unfazed by the brutality, Glenn smiles and raises her index finger, announcing that their condition boiled down to performing just one very simple task. Clapping her hands in a pleading and dramatic gesture, the shooter proclaims that their request for the famous monster slayer was to carry out an alien hunting mission on their behalf. The large bald man joins the conversation, detailing that a troublesome alien has taken up residence in an old excavation area, completely halting the scavengers' work, and promises the ride in exchange for clearing the place out. Whispering close to her companion's ear, the student apprehensively questions if he could handle the dangerous creature alone, as Loop's words indicated a very serious threat. Sporting unwavering confidence, the protagonist accepts the challenge immediately, calmly stating that no monster would be an impossible problem to take down if she was with him. The declaration sounds like a direct pick-up line, making the young woman's face explode in shades of red, and let out a strangled sound of embarrassment as she tries to hide under the confused gazes of the scavengers. With a confident smile on her face, the shooter turns her back, accepting the sealed deal, and points out in a threatening tone that she expected a clean and flawless job from him. In a brusque movement, the hunter gets his face aggressively close to hers, declaring that the feeling was mutual and lethally threatening that if they broke their word and betrayed them in an alien minefield, the punishment would be much more than just a warning. The hunter's menacing and murderous aura sends shivers down the shooter's spine, and she, sweating, stammers that not telling lies has always been her life's motto. Maintaining his imposing, unblinking posture, the android just glares at the travelers, ensuring that he expected that promise to be truly kept if they wanted to live. Watching the blatant intimidation, the girl and the bald scavenger just exchange confused and slightly scared looks at the aggressiveness of this newly formed pact. To break the tense and deadly mood, the pink-haired young woman raises her arm, shouting in celebration that the deal was officially sealed, and calling for everyone to leave immediately. The group then leaves the cafeteria table and walks side by side through the paved streets until they reach a parking lot behind a building where several large vehicles are resting. Standing proudly in front of a shiny blue car, the shooter strikes a showy pose and announces that this modest model would be their transport for the journey. Completely admiring the car's impeccable condition, the student clasps her hands, quietly praising the vehicle's quality, while the hunter observes the scene in silence with his arms crossed. The large man quickly opens the side door, and the shooter hurries the group, shouting for everyone to get in the car before they waste any more time. As soon as everyone is on board, the immense armored gates of the underground garage open, and the blue car speeds off directly into the dangerous terrains located beyond the protective walls. The narrative cuts to a scene of heavy boots stepping on debris-covered ground, indicating the presence of people observing the dead area up close. The pale, bruised face of the delinquent, who was humiliated in the alley hours ago, appears in the dark, showing a furious gaze and a sadistic desire for revenge against the shooter. With his body still enveloped in the residual sparks from the attack, he cracks his knuckles, commanding a huge gang of exiled criminal androids in the shadows, and, in a furious tone, orders everyone to advance with relentless violence, preparing a deadly ambush against their targets.